Chapter 1681. Lan Jingyi's attire was specially made to be able to withstand standard attacks. However, its placket was now slit by him, and it was torn apart. Lan Jingyi's body was alluring, curvy and with an ample bosom. Now that her clothing was torn, a silver innerwear was visible. No lovebirds or lotus flowers of any kind were seen on the apron, but instead, it was the image of a person. The person had black hair and white clothes just like the Lord. The man in blue examined the figure on her apron and smiled. "Is that Brother Huang you have sewn on your innerwear? Having your brother-in-law sewn on your apron, little mermaid. It looks like you like him, but does he know how you feel towards him? Oh well, since you like him so much, when I remove your skin, I could make it into a puppet doll and put on your innerwear before I send it as a gift to him." His smile was amiable, and his voice gentle, but what he said was eerie and terrifying. Lan Jingyi's entire body shivered. She wanted to move but could not. She wanted to curse but did not dare. Her pretty face was pale, and at a loss for words. You cannot do this to me. I am the princess of the kingdom of the mermaids. If you kill me, Brother Huang will not leave this unavenged, and the mermaid tribe will not forgive you. Are you willing to risk that just for the sake of a mermaid's skin? Let go of me, and I will repay your kindness later on. Pay me? How? The man in blue liked to play cat and mice games. He had already had a plan, but still wanted to play with her. He wanted to see her desperately begging before him. Before any response was given, he used the thin knife to slit the ribbon of her innerwear. "You would like to give me yourself?" The frigid tip of the knife touched Lan Jingyi's skin, and she had goosebumps all over. She was so shocked that she saw blackness before her eyes. You. Look at what I have done for you. Let go of me. What have you done for me? I have brought in Lan Weihu for you. That was, in fact, a small deed of yours, but had you not been affected by my spell, why would you be so obedient? Instantly, Lan Jingyi's innerwear was torn apart and slipped down from her chest. Hence, her provocative body was entirely out in the open before the eyes of the man in blue. Lan Jingyi panicked. She wanted to curl herself up, but 3 streaks of cold light emerged from the sleeves of the man in blue. Lan Jingyi gave off an ear-piercing scream. The 3 streaks were 3 long nails which pressed onto Lan Jingyi's hands and her tail. She was nailed to the ground alive. That was a very humiliating posture. Her fresh blood was like a stream as it flowed out from where the long nails had pierced. There was a sense of bloody beauty that moment. Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that her face grew pale. She had never been through such punishment throughout her life. The long nails that pierced through her body gave her pain in her bones, making her want to roll about and to struggle. Unfortunately, moving even a little would make it hurt 10 times more. Her clothes were torn, and her snow-colored body was lying within the pile of torn cloth. Fresh blood was flowing down from her wrists. She looked like a human fish. Her upper body was snow-colored, making her look like a 28-years-old young lady. Her lower body was pale green, full of glittery scales. Chapter 1682. Droplets of sweat emerged from her skin and scales. Like magic, the droplets condensed into pearls, each crystal clear, rolling on the ground. Mermaid sweat turns into pearls. Seems like this theory is not wrong after all. The man in blue laughed, looking at Lan Jingyi, who was in so much pain that even her lips were trembling. "Why did you not tear up? A mermaid's tears are what I need." Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that she even thought of killing herself. But it was hard for a mermaid to tear up. She was no different. It is not that she did not think of crying. She could not. The man in blue looked at her for a moment and sighed. "Seems like this torture is not enough." He moved his fingers, and the thin tip of his knife. Lan Jingyi cried out in pain as a huge scale was ripped off her by the man in blue. Ripping off her scales was more painful than pricking at her bones. Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that she shuddered, not only sweating profusely but finally, tears emerged from her eyes. She blinked a little, and small teardrops fell to the ground into a spherical-like pearl. This one sparkled much better than her sweat. The man in blue lifted his fingers, and the mermaid's tears dropped into his palm. He examined it, and shook his head. Too small. He then turned his attention back towards Lan Jingyi. He sighed. "You are so stingy, not even wanting to cry larger droplets of tears. I will need to force it out myself. He wielded the thin knife in his hand, and a couple of scales were ripped off this time. She was like a fish out of the water, resisting it for a while. Finally, big droplets of tears rolled down. Within her tears were blood. A mermaid's tears were half red and half transparent, like a pretty cat's eye, rolling about on the ground. Lan Weihu was in unspeakable terror just looking at it from above. Although she hated Lan Jingyi and wanted to cut her with a knife, looking at the scene before her made her think twice. The man in blue looked like a gentleman, but what he did made him as cruel as a devil. That made Lan Weihu gather insight into the base level of a person's cruelty. That mermaid had helped the man in blue with such a great deed, and he instead treated her so cruelly. She could only expect worse from him later on. Lan Weihu was terrified as well. Her eyes were dilated as she stared at the man in blue. If a cold gaze could kill someone, the man in blue had already been killed by Lan Weihu. The man in blue held the mermaid's tears in his palms and said softly, "Still not enough." He bowed his head down and looked at Lan Jingyi, who almost passed out. "I will rip 2 more scales off your body. Cry as you wish." The tip of the knife touched her scales, and Lan Jingyi was so scared that she shrieked. "I will cry. Stop ripping." "I will do it." She cried out all the tears she had throughout her life. The man in blue had collected a heap of mermaid's tears, and finally, he was satisfied. Then, a pair of sparkling eyes turned towards Lan Weihu, who was still suspended in the air. Lan Weihu could feel her hair standing on its ends. She cried in a fury, "You can kill me, but please do not humiliate me. Just kill me if you want to, or torture me until I cry." The man in blue sighed. "Such a charming young lady like you. How could I bear to let you cry? A mermaid's tears are precious, but those that belong to you, little fox, are not valuable at all." Lan Weihu looked at him warily. "Then what do you want?" Chapter 1683. Lan Weihu looked at him in fear. "What do you want to do to me? I don't think you want me to just watch you torture people, right?" The blue-shirt young man gently said, "Of course not. I am not free to do so. However, this mermaid has been humiliating you, so I tortured her in front of you to avenge you. You should feel happy and comforted." "I am not. You are such an unappreciative girl." The blue-shirt young man shook his head as he spoke. "I took revenge for you because of Shijio and wanted you to be happy. However, I did not know that you are so unappreciative. What a waste of my effort. If you're good to me, you should let me go." "It is not possible. It was so hard for me to get you here." "Why do you want me?" I want to borrow something from you. I was afraid that you would not want to lend it to me, so I had to catch you first in order for us to have a proper discussion about it." Lan Weihu was speechless. She asked, "What is it?" "The blood of your heart." Lan Weihu's face turned pale. It turned out that this bastard wanted her life. It was even worse than torturing Lan Jingyi. The blue-shirt young man looked at her pale little face. "Are you terrified now? Don't worry. I am still a gentleman. You are the best friend of the girl I like. I will not kill you." Lan Weihu glared at him angrily. How could he take her blood from her heart without killing her? The blue-shirt man turned over his palm, and there was a needle there. This needle was as sharp and thick as the needle used to knit sweaters. It was about a foot long, and it was now sparkling, which made people feel frightened. "Did you see this? I am going to stab this into the vein in your heart, and your blood will flow out along this needle. Don't worry, I will not take too much of your blood. I just need enough to fill up this cup." He also showed her the cup in his hand. The method he used was quite similar to the modern way to take bear bile. Gu Shijio used to tell Lan Weihu about some anecdotes from the modern world. When she heard about this, she thought that it was ruthless to the bear. Of course, she was also filled with anger. She felt that it was too cruel, and also felt sad for those bears. Unfortunately, it was her turn. Lan Weihu's face was pale. At first, she did not want to die before she saw Yan Qin, but now she would rather die. She made up her mind, and when she was about to bite her tongue, the blue-shirt young man had been prepared for it. He waved his sleeve, and Lan Weihu's acupuncture point was blocked. She could not move at all now. The blue-shirt young man reached out again, and the 4 thin chains on the Lan Weihu slid away silently. Lan Weihu was pulled to the shore of the blood pool. She could do nothing but watch as the distance between her and the blue-shirt young man was getting shorter. Help! Shijiao Yin-chun, help me. There were thin tubes that looked like human blood vessels everywhere. The thin tubes were crimson, and there was bright red blood flowing inside, making a creaking sound. This place was not really an underground building, but rather, it resembled the inside of a monster. It all resembled a spider web. Every street was well connected. There were many strange-shaped buildings along the way that looked like the hive. Although the sizes were different, they were all bright red, which looked like the internal organs of animals. There were too many roads. If an unfamiliar person were leading the way, and someone mistakenly entered this place, the person would be lost. Gu Shijiao never expected to think that there would be such a monster underneath the beautiful plum groove. She was very impressed by the ingenuos, but also felt slightly creeped out. The pathway was not an ordinary road. It was full of white bones that were arranged orderly along the way. Chapter 1684. Gu Shijiao already possessed a high spiritual power. After she utilized the eyes of yin-yang technique, she could see a lot of spirits. There were animals and human souls. These grievances floated on a path full of bones and mourned. However, they could not leave. They were stuck here. Earthbound spirits. These were the earthbound spirits. After killing these people or animals with a cruel method, their souls were not destroyed but could only float around their bones. Thus this underground was full of grievances. Gu Shijiao frowned. She was completely certain that this was the main nest of Mo Zhao. The layout of this place was the same as the underground palace below the volcano, but the style was completely different. It should take a long time to build such a place. Gu Shijiao also glanced at the color of the bones along the way. They were some that were more than 10 years old, and there were others that were much newer that were only 2 years old. There were even bones that just existed in recent days. Defuyus glanced around the place and frowned. The layout of this place was like a vast array, but he could not identify it. He did not even know which direction he should go. On the other hand, Gu Shijiao seemed to recognize the entire road. Despite being a little worried when she first came in, she was now like a frequent visitor here and continued striding forward. Have you seen this layout before? He could not help but ask her. Gu Shijiao did not look at him but explained. This should be built by Long Fan. It is one of the nests he made with Mo Zhao. Di Fui had seen the 2 other nests made by Long Fan, but the layout here was entirely different from the other 2 that he had seen before. He said, "Of course I know that this is their main nest, but I am seeing this layout for the first time. How do you know where the core array is in this array?" It was rare that he had something he did not know. If it happened in the past, Gu Shijiao would undoubtedly be proud to share this knowledge and tease him while doing so. But now, she was not in the mood. Her voice was indifferent. The layout here is referencing the blood flow of a python. The man behind the scenes wants to collect the blood of little fox, so they must be in the crucial area in the core array. Di Fui remained silent. If it was a human blood flow map, he could recognize it at a glance. However, he could not say the same about a python. When did you study the blood flow map of a python? Gu Shijiao did not answer. If it was not necessary to let him know and she was too lazy to explain it now. When she was studying medicine in the modern day, she often dissected some animals which including pythons. Long Fan was undoubtedly a metamorphosis genius. He could build one of his nests just like an anatomical python. If a person was not familiar with the structure of a python, regardless of how skilled he or she was, they would be trapped. If Di Fui did not come with Gu Shijiao, he could have taken a day and still not find the right core array. The 2 of them had walked for a long way but did not see many people. Although there were only a few people here, all of them were masters. Gu Shijiao had observed in the dark. The lowest level among these people had at least level 8 of spiritual power, and most of them were at level 9. From their conversation, Gu Shijiao got to know that these people were formerly the people under the fake Celestial Masters Wa. After the fake Celestial Masters Wa was defeated, they were brought in by the master of this secret base. Chapter 1685. Gu Shijiao and Defuyus were the best 2 people in the world to save Little Fox. They had taken out everyone they encountered at lightning speed. Those people did not even have time to scream. They could also easily camouflage themselves into groups of people to prevent anyone from noticing them. Thus, no accidents happened to them along the way. Soon, two of them were very close to the core array. At this time, there was an accident. Since the two people did not encounter any trap along the way, they loosened their attention and became careless. Di Fui had accidentally stepped on something, and a big hole suddenly appeared in the ground. Di Fui was not prepared for it, and he fell directly into the hole. Gu Shijiu, who walked in front, heard that something was behind her. When she turned back, she could not see Di Fui anymore, and there was a big hole in the ground that was at least 2 feet in width. Gu Shijiu was stunned for a few seconds and quickly rushed over. She looked down the hole. The hole was bottomless and dark, and there was a faint red flash in the depths of the hole. She saw Di Fui. He did not fall to the end, but his body was stuck on the wall of the hole at about 7 or 8 feet deep. As the light in the hole was dim at best, Gu Shijiu could not see what happened to him. With his skill, if he fell into a hole, he should be able to jump up immediately. Why was he not coming up yet? She did not have time to think about it, and teleported down into the hole without hesitation. Shhhhhh. She immediately teleported to his side. Then she cuddled him. Only after she went into the hole did she know what was going on. This hole was bizarre. From the top, it seemed to be a few feet wide. However, after Gu Shijiu found that the hole was very narrow, it could only accommodate 2 people. She intended to fall at his side, but after she teleported down, something squeezed her and pushed her directly into his arms. Di Fui was initially facing the wall. As he heard her movement, he could barely turn around and just in time to catch her. This hole was bizarre and very flexible. When Di Fui fell, the walls squeezed him into place, and he could not move at all. After Gu Shijiu fell, the hole could barely accommodate the 2 of them. Therefore, the 2 of them were squeezed like the sardines in a can. There was no gap between the 2 of them. Gu Shijiu was speechless. This was the first time for the both of them to be so physically close after they broke up. It was the first time they cuddled. She could smell the scent from his body, his warmth transmitted to her body just as before. It used to be her favorite place in the world. Her heart began to hurt, and an inexplicable sourness rushed straight up to her nose. She sipped her lips and tried to struggle out of his arms. She did not want to be so close to him. However, she could not get rid of him. As she struggled, the wall of the cave continued to push both of them closer. Even if she was in his arms, she almost could not breathe properly. Her breasts were now pressed against his chest. This posture was unusually intimate. Even when both of them were still together, they were not as close as they were now. Di Fui naturally could feel the softness of her body. The pictures of their loving scenes over the years flashed in his mind. Chapter 1686. The desires of his body that had been forced to sleep now had signs of awakening. After all, both of them had been husband and wife for 8 years. They were very familiar with each other, so they could easily feel the difference when either party had a little movement. Gu Shijiu was so close to him, so naturally, she could sense the movement of his body. Her heart pumped slightly faster, and her eyes were somewhat hot. Her blood was boiling, but then she remembered his betrayal. All the emotions were blown away by the cold wind. She started to struggle out desperately. However, the harder she struggled, the tighter the squeeze was. She was very uncomfortable being squeezed, so she opened her mouth to breathe. "Don't move." Di Fui's hand was on her waist. "This is a trap, and you can't struggle out of it." Di Fui quietly used his spiritual power to forcibly push the wall behind her, so that she could have a slight gap to breathe. "Do you know how to escape this trap?" Gu Shijiu asked. In the dark, her skin was soft and fair. Her red lips were moist, and her eyes were shiny. Di Fui suppressed his desire to kiss her and whispered, "Be patient, let me try something." His palm moved behind her inch by inch as he tried to explore the mechanism on the wall. Although it was only the back of his palm that touched her back, Gu Shijiu could still sense the heat of his palm. She was also very uncomfortable being so close to his body. Di Fui suddenly noticed that her breathing was slightly heavy. Her face was red, and she was somewhat stunned. Finally, he recalled something, and his palm went stiff. There was a sensitive point on her back. When both of them were intimate in the past, Difui often pinched her at the sensitive point to make her lose her senses. "I am sorry," Difui whispered, and his palm tried to leave that position. Gu Shijio did not have any expression on her face, and she did not say anything. However, her red face gradually turned pale. Difui did not find the mechanism to switch the trap off. Gu Shijio took a deep breath and asked, "You can shrink your bones, right? I noticed that the mechanism has a slight delay. If you can quickly shrink your bones, I will use the teleportation technique to get us out immediately." This was a good suggestion. Difui also agreed with it. Okay. After he agreed to it, his body immediately shrank. When his size was reduced, he instantly started to fall. Gu Shijio reacted quickly to grab him. At the same time, she teleported out when the two of them were back on the ground. Gu Shijio finally heaved a sigh of relief. She unintentionally looked down and saw the miniature version of Difui. To make a big gap, Difui now looked like a child of 2 to 3 years old. At this moment, he stood on the ground and had not yet recovered to his original appearance. Although Gu Shijio had been with him for so long, this was the first time she saw him in this appearance. The small body was less than 1 meter tall. He had a pair of big eyes with long eyelashes, a high nose and a small mouth like a porcelain doll. He was just too adorable. In the eyes of Gu Shijio, he had always been strong and masculine. She never thought that he would look this way as a kid. When she saw it, she felt her heart softened. She wanted to pick him up and kiss him. A beautiful and cute kid could always attract a lot of attention. Almost all people, regardless of age, liked cute and adorable kids. Gu Shijio was no exception. Although she did not want to see him anymore, she could not resist looking at him now. If, in those 8 years she gave birth to a baby, maybe this would be his appearance. Chapter 1687. Gu Shijio wanted to have a baby before, but unfortunately, she abruptly moved her eyes away from him and turned away. "Let's go." She walked forward for a moment, and found that he did not keep up. She was afraid that he would fall into another trap, so she turned back once again. She found that he was still standing in the same place, and was working hard to grow taller. The scene looked like a fast-forwarded growth of a child. When she looked back, he had grown into a child of 7 or 8 years old. Two of them looked at each other, and it felt awkward. His fair tender skin flushed as he felt very embarrassed. He smiled and a dimple on each of his cheeks could be seen. Difuyus was somewhat bitter by all that was happening. All men would always want to let his wife see his manly and robust side. This was the exact opposite. To make matters worse, this was Difui, a god who had always been highly respected. As she was gazing at him, for the first time in his life, he wanted to drill into a hole. Of course, this thought just flashed in his mind for a second, and then he calmed down. He accelerated the speed of his growth a little faster, so Gu Shijio witnessed the whole process of him growing up from a small infant to a small kid, then to a young handsome man and finally back to his original appearance. Of course, when he was back to his appearance, he covered his face with a mask. It took about 5 to 6 minutes. Gu Shijio seemed to have seen his whole life pass by in those few minutes. She never knew that he used to look so cute as a child. When they were still together, Gu Shijio once asked him about his childhood. Difui told her that he could not recall anything from before he was a teenager. He had no father and no mother. He owned a set of strange skill and slowly survived battle after battle to become the most powerful man in the world. Something did not add up though. It took him only a second to shrink into a kid. Why was it so difficult for him to grow taller now? Also, he was now the Lord and not Difui. He could freely transform between two identities in front of her. Gu Shijio could not help but look at him again. Difui seemed to understand her doubts, so he explained, "If I am not wrong, Lan Jingyi has told the person behind the scenes about my identity as the Lord. When she sees me later, she will be calling me by my real name. Therefore, it is better to use the identity of the Lord to save her." It was for the sake of Lan Jingyi. He cared a lot about Lan Jingyi on account of Lan Jingka. Gu Shijio did not speak, but turned and left. It was his own business on which identity he wanted to use. It had nothing to do with her. For now, she only wanted to save Little Fox and to figure out who was the bastard behind the scene was. After a few turns, there was a heart-shaped building in front of them. The building not only looked like a heart, but instead seemed like a real one. When they saw it from the outside, the building was expanding and shrinking as if a big heart was pumping. The building was also the home of many blood vessels. There were more blood vessels than spider webs. Around the building, there was a trained master standing 3 or 4 meters apart, guarding each exit and entrance. Without saying anything, they knew that it was the central part of this building, and also the place where the people behind the scene was located. She listened to the surrounding and it sounded like a dead town. She frowned. Chapter 1688. After she came in, she knew that the guards in this place could not arbitrarily walk around. Each of them had their specific duties and sites to cover. Thus, Gushijio and Difuya's fake identities could not be used anymore. Hence, they returned to their original appearance and went into stealth mode. At this moment, the 2 doors of the weird building were closed. They could not see anything in it. There were a total of 10 guards, all of which had level 9 or more of spiritual powers. These guards were extremely cautious just looking at their postures. They were standing in a strategic formation. With this array, if the front was being attacked, the back could counterattack, while if the end was being attacked, the front could counterattack. Thus it was almost impossible to attack them quietly. Gushijio paused to think for a moment. Subconsciously, she wanted to use her teleportation technique to enter the place. She was stopped by Difui. No. There is a wizardry barrier that prevents people from teleporting in. Gushijio took back her hand. She decided to try to create a diversion. She teleported to a building not far from here, and started a fire. What she did not expect was that water was sprayed on top of the flame just as it was ignited. This place was quite advanced. When she was about to find another place to start a fire, Difui appeared silently behind her. His finger flicked, and there was a flame that burned a building next to them. The water continued to spray above the fire, but this time it failed to set the light off. Gushijio looked at him in surprise. Difui only said 2 words, spiritual fire. The fire naturally alerted the guards who were wandering around. They ran over to this place. By taking advantage of the chaos, Gushijio moved back to the heart-like building and found that the 10 masters were still there. They had no intention to fight the fire. Instead, they stayed even closer to the building and were more alert. It seemed that the people behind the scene had instructed them not to leave the place regardless of the situation. Difui continued to set fire at 7 to 8 other places. Screams could be heard from all angles. Although the 10 masters were horrified and panicked, they still did not move. It seemed that even if all the other places were burnt, the 10 people would not move away from their sight. However, this also indicated that the people behind the scene were hidden in this heart-shaped building. He might have already begun to torture Lan Weihu at this time. Gushijio was anxious. At this time, Difui had come back to her. He looked at her and then looked at the 10 people. He then calmly said, "There is no other way. Let's break into it." When he was about to make a move, Gushijio said, "We should split." Difui looked at her with his eyebrow raised. Gushijio continued to explain, "Once we start to break in, we will attract the attention of the people inside. I am afraid that he might be acting unfavorably to Little Fox. Besides this, it might take at least 10 minutes to settle these 10 masters. By the time we break into the building, the people inside might have escaped. Why don't you attract their attention first, and I will take the opportunity to teleport to the entrance. I will use the cold smashing technique to break through the wizardry barrier that prevents teleportation from stopping the people inside first. After you settle these 10 masters, you go in." The method that was proposed by Gushijio was the best way for now. However, Difui was a bit hesitant. It was not difficult for him to settle these 10 people. It was just a matter of how time he would take. However, if she broke in alone, she would need to face the culprits alone. Chapter 1689. It's better for us to settle the outside together. I don't think it will be too late to go in after we settle the 10 of them. Difui rejected her proposition. Gushijio frowned. She did not quite understand him. She paused for a while and said, "Are you afraid that I will do something unfavorable to Lan Jingyi if I go in earlier?" Di Fui was speechless. There were times when she was slow, but sometimes she was amazingly sharp. He did not reply but just stared at her. Gu Shijiu deemed his silence as an acknowledgement. She chuckled. Don't worry, I will never do something unfavorable to her this time. If you don't believe me, I will swear to you. If I don't keep to my word, I will. Before she could finish her sentence, Di Fui interrupted her. His voice was cold. You don't have to swear. I believe you. He turned and rushed out. Gu Zijia's suggestion was undoubtedly the quickest way. 3 minutes later, Di Fui and the 10 people were already fighting intensely, and 2 of them had been killed. As for Gu Shijiu, she had now stood at the entrance of the weird building, raising her hand and breaking the wizardry barrier that surrounded the building. As the wizardry barrier broke, she was shocked by a shrill scream from the inside. She could not recognize the owner of this scream, but the first person that Gu Shijiu thought of was Lan Weihu. Her facial expression changed. She teleported in once she broke into the wizardry barrier. Then she saw the scene inside. There was a fleshy mermaid lying on the ground, and the ghost-like scream came from the mermaid. Lan Weihu's limbs had been tied up, and she was suspended in the air. Her face was pale. There was a big sharp needle inserted in her chest, and blood came out from the other end of the sharp needle. It was still dripping. A blue-shirt young man was standing in front of her holding a wine cup in his hand. The wine cup was half full, and there was bright red liquid shaking in the container. Apparently, it was the blood from Little Fox's heart. When he turned back, his lips were bloody, and the blood was on his lips. He looked like a vampire. Lan Weihu initially thought that she would die. She was despaired and closed her eyes to bear with the pain. Suddenly, she saw Gu Shijiu, who broke in abruptly. Her eyes lit up and her mouth was ajar. Shijiu. Her tears rolled down her face. The blue-shirt young man heard Gu Zijia's entrance. He turned and saw Gu Shijiu, who just broke in. He sighed. Shijiu, you are so fast. You should not get involved in this mess. Gu Shijiu grabbed her fingers and looked at this person. This person looked just like Rong Jialua. But the temperament. You are Emo Zhao. That blue-shirt young man laughed and softly said, Shijiu, you are indeed very familiar with me. Even if I have changed my appearance, you can still recognize me in a second. Gu Shijiu walked closer to him. Where is Rong Jialua? The blue-shirt young man stood straight. He is here. Shijiu, this body belongs to him. Can't you recognize it? He laughed. At this moment he looked entirely different from Rong Jialua. Gu Shijiu bit her lips. Are you metamorphosing him, or occupying his body? Suddenly, a light flashed in her hand and hit the wine cup in the blue-shirt young man's hand. She put a lot of power into that attack. The blue-shirt young man was not able to dodge it, and the wine cup in his hand had shattered into pieces. The blood inside the container was splashed on the ground. The blue-shirt young man remained silent. There was a flash of light in his eyes. He rushed directly to Lan Weihu, who was hanging there. It was evident that he wanted to take Lan Weihu as hostage. Gu Shijiu had been prepared for it, and immediately teleported to Lan Weihu. She released her spiritual power from her palm, and there was a white light that hit the chest of the blue-shirt young man. Emo Zhao immediately receded. He retreated to the side of the blood pool and smiled. Chapter 1690. Emo Zhao smiled and said, Shijiu, I have always been merciful to you. Do you really want to put me to death? Look, I am even reluctant to kill your friend. I just took a little blood off of her. Gu Shijiu quickly glanced at Little Fox. Although the needle on her chest looked dangerous, it was not fatal. As long as the wound was treated well, she would make a good recovery. After Lan Weihu saw the arrival of Gu Shijiu, she saw hope and looked more energetic. Shijiu, don't care about me. Do what you need to do. Gu Shijiu flicked her finger, and threw Lan Weihu a pill directly into her mouth. Swallow it. Lan Weihu was very obedient, and immediately swallowed the pill. This pill was naturally the best medicine that Gu Shijiu had with her. It not only could save her life, but also stop her bleeding. Save me. The bloody mermaid also whispered. Gu Shijiu did not care about her. She already recognized that the mermaid was Lan Jingyi. Gu Shijiu felt that she was already doing her a favor by not taking the opportunity to kill her, so it was impossible for her to do more than that. Besides, although Lan Jingyi's body looked bloody, those wounds were just injuries on the surface and were not fatal. She was the culprit who caused Little Fox to be so miserable. Thus, she deserved to get punished. What's more, Emo Zhao was still watching her. Hence, she did not have much time to treat her wounds. When she threw the pill to Little Fox, Emo Zhao took the opportunity to attack. He extended his sleeve and a 5-colored light bloomed like a net to cover Gu Shijiu. Little Shijiu, let's stay together this time. The colorful light was extremely powerful, so Gu Shijiu did not dare to neglect it. She quickly pinched her fingers and countered. She worried that the colorful light from Emo Zhao would impact Little Fox, so she used up her full strength to counterattack. Her palm was warm, and there was a 7-colored ray of light issued from her palm to meet the 5-colored light from Emo Zhao. Bang! There was a loud sound when the two lights collided. Gu Shijiu felt the blood burst in her chest while Emo Zhao retreated several steps. He was shocked. It's you. What do you mean? Gu Shijiu did not hesitate, but continued to issue another attack. Almost at the same time, there was a loud bang from the direction of the entrance. Someone apparently broke it. Emo Zhao's facial expression changed. He flew out along with the momentum from the attack issued by Gu Shijiu and jumped into the blood pool. There was not even a splash of water, and he had disappeared. Gu Shijiu was stunned. Did he just escape? Gu Shijiu rushed forward and wanted to jump into the blood pool to see. Don't! Lan Weihu yelled to discourage such an attempt. The blood in the pool is poisonous. Gu Shijiu stopped hesitantly, and right at that moment, a white man slid into the room. It was Di Fui. He got rid of the 10 people in 5 minutes and broke in. He was stained with blood on his white clothes, and his silver hair was a little messy. His eyes quickly swept through the room and stopped at Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu took a deep breath and quickly told him what happened. Emo Zhao has occupied the body of Rong Jialu. He has just jumped into the blood pool and ran away. Di Fui waved his sleeve and threw something into the blood pool. It dissolved in the pool and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This blood pool was highly toxic and extremely corrosive. Did Emo Zhao jump into the blood pool to escape at the expense of his current body? Or does he have a unique protective body that would allow him to escape from the blood pool? Chapter 1691 Brother Huang Save. Save me. Lan Jingyi almost could not breathe, and stretched out her hand to Di Fui. She was still half naked, so she looked somewhat seductive despite the bloodstains all over her. Di Fui took a glance and then quickly turned away. He threw a rope to her. We should not stay here for too long. Quickly leave now. He lifted his sleeves and then issued a wave of water to cover Lan Jingyi's body. He gave her a pill and put her into a wizardry barrier. After he finished treating Lan Jingyi, he looked at Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu had already started to crack the 4 thin chains on Lan Weihu. She was an expert in breaking complicated mechanisms, so she would be able to free her friend soon. The only thing that troubled her was that the fine chains had to be pulled out of her shoulder to save her. Little Fox was always afraid of pain, so pulling these chains out was utter torture for her. Gu Shijiu could not bear to see Little Fox hurt. Don't be soft-hearted, Di Fui spoke. If you want to save her, you need to pull out the chains. Gu Shijiu was slightly stunned. She seemed to think of something, and she was looking for anesthetic drugs in her storage bag. Unfortunately, she did not have this kind of medicine in her storage bag at the moment. She could not even find one. She could not help but look at Di Fui and ask, "Do you have a painkiller?" Di Fui frowned. When he was about to open his mouth, Lan Jingyi, who was now hovering around him, cried, "It hurts. Brother Huang, I am in so much pain." Di Fui did not speak, but threw a blue pill to Lan Jingyi, who was in the wizardry barrier. Lan Jingyi swallowed it. Gu Shijiu recognized that it was a painkiller which was personally refined by Di Fui. It was more effective than modern anesthetic medicine. If Little Fox could get one of these pills, she would not be in so much pain anymore if she were to pull the chain out of her. She looked at him and waited for him to give her another one. However, she did not expect that Di Fui would disappoint her. I only have one left. Gu Shijiu remained silent. She looked at Lan Jingyi. After Lan Jingyi swallowed the pill, she looked much better. At this moment, Lan Jingyi was looking at her, and she seemed to be a bit smug. Gu Shijiu abruptly removed her eyes from Lan Jingyi, and did not want to see her anymore. However, Lan Jingyi did not stop. Brother Huang, I am much better now. Your medicine really works, Di Fui advised her. Quickly concentrate and practice the Shishin formula that I taught you. Okay. Lan Jingyi was an obedient girl in front of him. She looked at Gu Shijiu for a while, then immediately began to practice. Her fishtail was half-curved, and both her palms were closed together. She closed her eyes, and after a while, a faint blue light surrounded her body to complement the white light that Di Fui used to cover her. Gu Zijia's face turned pale. At this moment she could not delay any more. She pulled the thin chains out of Lan Weihu's body, although she tried to do so as gently as possible. Lan Weihu still faced unbearable pain. Her face was pale, and there was cold sweat all over it. Nonetheless, Lan Weihu was brave. Her white teeth bit her lip as she tried not to scream. Her lips were so severely bitten that blood was flowing out from them. If the problem were not related to Gu Shijiu, she would not be panicked. But since the person she was healing was Little Fox, even though she knew what to do, she still acted gently. Come on, we need to go as soon as possible, Di Fui urged. Gu Shijiu was frustrated. She interrupted him. Since you have already rescued the person you wanted to save, you can leave first. Chapter 1692. Di Fui suddenly raised his hand. There was a light issued from his palm that extracted the thin chains on Lan Weihu Shua. The two thin chains in her shoulders were pulled out drenched with blood. Lan Weihu screamed, and she fell to the ground. Gu Shijiu was shocked. She tried her best to catch her, but Little Fox had already fainted, and blood was gushing out from her shoulders. Gu Shijiu quickly pressed on the acupuncture point on her shoulder to stop the blood flow. Di Fui handed her a white jade bottle. Apply this on her. This was his best gold-inflicted remedy and was very effective in hemostasis treatment. Gu Shijiu pushed his palm away and rejected his help. I don't need it, Di Fui continued. Gu Shijiu, sometimes you have to think about the big picture and resist acting on your emotion. Gu Shijiu sneered. Don't worry, I won't be acting emotionally when it comes to my friend's safety. Di Fui looked at her pale face and frowned. She needs to have the best gold-inflicted remedy to cure her injuries. Otherwise, even though it is not fatal, her skills will be destroyed. Brother Huang, since she doesn't appreciate it. Even if, in her heart, her friend's safety is not as important as her pride. Lan Jingyi said out loud. It seemed that she was not focused on her meditation. Gu Shijiu quickly took out the gold-inflicted remedy she carried with her, and applied it on Lan Weihu. Her medicine was very effective. Once she applied it on Lan Weihu, the blood had stopped flowing. The effect was even better than the remedy provided by Di Fui earlier. Lan Jingyi was speechless. Her teasing did not work, and she was a bit resentful. She stared at the gold-inflicted remedy in Gu Zijia's hand. Well, that was also provided by Brother Huang. Only Brother Huang can make that high-quality medicine. Gu Shijiu looked at the Di Fui coldly. You can ask your Brother Huang whether this medicine was provided by him. This medicine was made by her recently, and it had nothing to do with Di Fui. It was not true that she was not as good as Di Fui for many aspects. However, at least in pharmaceutical matters, she could definitely match him. Lan Jingyi still wanted to talk, but all of a sudden, the wizardry barrier shook, and she rolled for several rounds. She had a lot of wounds on her body. Therefore, this rolling around had hurt her. She screamed in pain, and her body was trembling. Di Fui coldly said, If you are very free, I don't mind leaving you here. Lan Jingyi's facial expression changed and she quickly said, No. No, I know that I am wrong. Brother Huang, brother, since I am also a Heaven's Gift disciple, please don't leave me here. Di Fui gazed at her and did not speak. Lan Jingyi did not dare to speak again. Heaven's Gift disciple? Was Lan Jingyi also a Heaven's Gift disciple? She was not previously. Was she a new one? Gu Shijiu knew that Lan Jingyi was skilled in the wood element, and it was the same as Long Sai. Did Di Fui give the vacancy to Lan Jingyi after removing Long Sai as a Heaven's Gift disciple? Gu Shijiu asked. Is she a Heaven's Gift disciple? When did it happen? After all, She was also a tester of heaven's gift disciples, so she had the right to know the truth. Di Fui answered casually. Not long ago. Lan Jingyi looked at Di Fui and then looked at Gu Shijiu. She could not help but interrupt. It happened 2 months ago. 2 months ago I was injured and could not stop bleeding. Chapter 1693. Brother Huang said that if I have the bloodline as a heaven's gift disciple, I could cure this disease. Thus, he assisted me in becoming the wood element heaven's gift disciple to get rid of the disease. Gu Zijia's fingertips that in her sleeves had tightly pinched her palm. 2 months ago was also the time when Long Sai was abolished as a heaven's gift disciple. It seemed that after Long Sai was removed, Lan Jingyi took over his position right away. Perhaps Di Fui had had this idea for a long time. He had been planning very well for Lan Jingyi's future. Gu Shijiu had been thinking of a way to help Long Sai restore his identity as heaven's gift disciple. She felt that since it could be abolished, there should be a way to recover it too. Therefore, recently she frequently disturbed the firmament stone to ask for suggestions. She also rummaged through all the books that she could access to find the method. It seemed that she was too naive. Di Fui had no bottom line when it came to matters that he cared about. When he cared about a person, he could even violate the rules set by the heavens. Heaven's gift disciple. Shouldn't it be arranged by the heavens? How could he intervene in the ruling and not be afraid of being condemned? He was the god of this continent. But does that permit him to treat everyone like chess pieces that move according to his plan? The sudden feeling of sadness filled her heart. Her face was ashen. She told herself that she should not let herself be hurt by him anymore. However, her emotions overwrote her rationale. Her heart was still in pain after knowing the truth. She stopped talking and quickly wrapped Lan Weihe's wounds. As she was still outraged, her fingers trembled slightly. You can give her proper treatment once we leave. We should not stay here any longer. Let's quickly get out. Di Fui raised his hand to hold her sleeve. Use your teleportation technique. Shua. There was a tearing sound. One corner of Gu Zijia's sleeve was torn. She coldly said, we should leave separately. She carried Lan Weihu and teleported away in the blink of an eye. Di Fui was speechless. Gu Zijia's teleportation technique was compelling. She teleported straight out of the complicated and strange underground palace. She met Lan Yu near the entrance of the underground palace. Lan Yu followed Gu Zijia's instructions and had been staying outside to coordinate with her. When he saw Gu Shijiu come out together with Lan Weihu, he was relieved and greeted her in a hurry. How is she? She is slightly injured, but it is not too serious. Gu Shijiu heaved a sigh of relief and glanced around. Where is Yanchen? Lan Yu sighed. He ran out of patience. After you left, he reopened the entrance and went into it. Gu Shijiu was speechless. Lan Weihe's face grew paler. Yanchen. She wanted to see Yanchen. At the moment, Lan Yu was not the only one waiting outside. There were also Luo Zhanyu and Li Mengxia as well as Long Sai. These people were summoned by Gu Shijiu using the directed audio spell. She did not want to disturb Long Sai, so she did not call him. Nonetheless, it happened that Long Sai was drinking tea with Luo Zhanyu. Lan Yu wanted to carry Lan Weihu. Shijiu, let me carry her. Lan Weihu saw Lan Yu's hands were reaching out and her body subconsciously shrank into Gu Zijia's arms and avoided his hands. Lan Yu was speechless. Lan Weihu did not dare to look at the disappointed Lan Yu. After experienced turmoil, she realized that she always liked Yanchen and wanted to marry him. Lan Yu was good to her, but she did not have any feelings towards him. She just treated him as a friend. She did not want to hide her emotions, so naturally, she did not want to let Lan Yu carry her. Gu Shijiu could understand Lan Weihe's thoughts. Chapter 1694. Gu Shijiu said, her injuries still require treatment and should not be delayed. Instructor Long, can you take care of her? Gu Shijiu then handed Lan Weihu over to Li Mengxia and said, Mengxia, can you please carry her and leave with Overlord Long? Li Mengxia would never reject an order from Gu Shijiu. Sure. She took Lan Weihu over, and Lan Weihu was obedient this time. However, her eyes were constantly focused on the exit. Why did Yanchen not come out yet? She hoped that he was not trapped inside. Long Sai asked Gu Shijio. Are you okay? You look very pale. I'm fine, Instructor Long. I will hand over Weihu to you. Please help to heal her. Long Sai did not speak. Suddenly he raised his hand to check the Gu Zijius vein. Only after he confirmed that she was not injured did he let go of her hand. Do not worry. I will be responsible for healing Lan Weihu. Gu Shijio was relieved. After she got assurance from Long Sai, she knew that Lan Weihu would not have any problems. Lan Yu was trying to say something, but suddenly, the ground under the feet tremored like an earthquake. I am going to find Yanqun. Gu Shijio turned and re-entered the palace. Long Sai frowned. He knew her temperament well, so he did not try to stop her. However, Luo Zhanyu was conflicted, and he wanted to follow her. He was stopped by Long Sai. You don't have to go. With Zijia's current ability, she can protect herself from any danger. If you go in without knowing the situation, you will drag her down. Luo Zhanyu pondered on Long Sai's words for a second, and he agreed with him. Long Sai sighed. He still believed that Gu Shijio could come out safely. With his current level of skills, he was useless to her and could only help heal Lan Weihu to give her a reason to smile. Therefore he left with Li Mingxia, who carried Lan Weihu. Lan Yu did not follow. He stood under a plum tree and looked at the plum blossoms. Luo Zhanyu patted his shoulder. Why aren't you following them? Lan Yu rubbed his nose and sighed. I think the person she doesn't want to see right now is me. This is the first time I am being ignored. Luo Zhanyu knew the story between Lan Yu, Lan Weihu, and Yanqun, so he was quite sympathetic. Although the falling flower has good intention, the water may not accept it. In fact, you should not force her if she doesn't like you. Why would you want to break a couple just for your interest? When you should let go, just do it. Lan Yu glanced at him. Can you let go of your fiancé? If Lan Weihu had not run away, she would already be my wife. The point is that she ran away from you. This proves that she does not put you in her heart. Anyway, you are the king of Blue Fox family. Why would you want to force a girl like this? I don't think you have any hidden disease that prevents you from finding a good wife. Lan Yu sneered. You are the one who has a hidden disease. There are a lot of girls who want to marry me. He was just reluctant to accept the truth. The main reason why he wanted to marry Lan Weihu was to follow her father's will. Secondly, it was also helpful to him to improve his skills and spiritual power. Thirdly, she was the national master of the Blue Fox family. If he married her, it meant that he had more power in the Blue Fox family. Fourthly, he also liked Little Fox. He thought that she was cute and quite compatible to be his wife. Of course, Lan Yu's love for Lan Weihu was far less than Yanqun's. He would never sacrifice his life for Lan Weihu. Chapter 1695. All of a sudden, the ground shook vigorously again. It felt as though it was a magnitude 9 earthquake. A few of them were not alert to the sudden change. Hence, they almost fell. Luckily, all of them were elites and quickly rose up to in midair when they noticed something was wrong. The ground collapsed and cracked as the entire plum forest collapsed. Dust was flying up to the sky, and the loud collapse made everyone temporarily speechless. The scene on the ground looked like an apocalypse. Luo Zhania's facial expression immediately changed as he witnessed the scenes below. Shijio was still in the underground palace. He turned around and was about to rush down to the ground. But Lan Yu managed to pull him back. You can't go. You'll be buried alive in there. I need to save my sister. Luo Zhanyu was panicked as he tried to struggle out from Lan Yu's grasp. Lan Yu's power had almost recovered, and his external ability was about the same as Luo Zhania's. Therefore Luo Zhanyu could not escape. She has already achieved a level 10 spiritual power. She should be able to teleport out even if she is buried underground. However, you will die if you go now. Yanqun was stubborn and look what happened. Do you want to give Shijio another problem? Luo Zhanyu was unhappy that Lan Yu lectured him. Although he knew that what Lan Yu said was relevant, that was his sister. He really could not calm himself in such a short time. Suddenly, a white light flashed across the dust with 2 people engulfed inside who shot up to the sky. Since the dust was too thick, no one could see who those 2 people were. Shijio. Luo Zhanyu screamed as he rushed over to check. However, when he arrived somewhere nearby, he realized that was not Gu Shijie but Di Fui and Lan Jingyi. The two of them looked fine. Di Fui's robe was still neat and clean while Lan Jingyi was floating in a wizardry barrier behind him while she meditated. Luo Zhanyu was stunned. He grunted. Di Fui, have you seen Shijie? Di Fui frowned. I thought she had escaped with Lan Weihu. Did you not see her? Her teleportation technique was the fastest way out of the underground palace. Di Fui could not even catch up with her. She had come out with Lan Weihu. However, Yan Chen was still in the underground palace. He had gone in after you because he was worried. He didn't come out. Hence, Shijie passed Lan Weihu to Overlord Long, and then went in again to find Yan Chen. However, she appears to be missing. Di Fui's expression changed slightly, because he knew how dangerous it was in the underground palace as he just escaped from there. The quake was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. It was Mo Zhao who initiated the destruction mechanism after he escaped. All the blood vessels burst and the blood from the blood vessels were corrosive. When he escaped, he witnessed all the guards who did not manage to escape turn into ashes as the poisonous blood spilled onto them. The explosion of the blood vessels covered all directions without missing any single spot. Thus, there was no place for them to hide. Di Fui might have suffered the same fate if he did not manage to initiate the protection array and rush out in time. Gu Shijie could perform teleportation. Hence, she would probably teleport out even if she could not find Yan Chen, right? She knew it was dangerous, so she probably would not risk her life this way. Perhaps she had teleported tens of miles away. Hence, it was normal if no one could see her. Strangely, Di Fui was a little panicked. He took a deep breath and retrieved the jade tablet which he always used to contact her. He dialed and waited for her to answer. However, the jade tablet was unresponsive after a few blinks, and then turned back to its original appearance. Di Fui's concern could be seen all over his face, and the fingers which he used to hold the tablet turned pale. Chapter 1696. There were only two possibilities in Di Fui's mind. 1. She was entering a hazardous place, and she switched off the jade tablet because she was scared that she would be distracted. 2. The jade tablet might be damaged. Which one was it then? He remembered that her jade tablet was on when they both went in together. It did not make sense for her to switch off the jade tablet just because she needed to save Yan Chen. Was it the second possibility? He tried very hard to suppress his anxiousness and looked at Luo Zhanyu. Could you try to contact her with your directed audio spell? Luo Zhanius' eyes were already red. I've tried but failed. In other words, her other directed audio spell was also switched off or completely damaged. Suddenly, Lan Yu screamed in excitement. Hey, I got hold of Yan Chen. Both Luo Zhanyu and Di Fui's eyes sparkled as they looked at Lan Yu. Di Fui took the directed audio spell from Lan Yu's hand. Yan Chen, where's Shijie? Yan Chen paused for a second. I thought she had gone out to meet you. She just left right after she saved me. I thought she would go and meet you. In fact, Yan Chen was in danger not long after he rushed in, and he almost fell into a sea of blood after triggering a mechanism. Gu Shijie managed to contact him at the critical moment, and successfully saved him with her teleportation. Since Yan Chen knew Lan Weihu was safe, he did not want to stay any longer. When he was about to go out with Gu Shijie, the entire palace was on the brink of collapse. Gu Shijie was very fast. Hence, she immediately teleported away with Yan Chen. Due to her panicked nature, she teleported 50 miles away with Yan Chen. Later, she asked Yan Chen to find Lan Weihu in Long Sai's place as she still had something urgent to follow up. After that, she disappeared. Yan Chen missed Little Fox very much. Hence, he quickly contacted Long Sai. After getting his location, he immediately rushed over. While he was on his journey to meet Lan Weihu, he got a call from Lan Yu, and only then did he know that Gu Shijie did not meet up with Lan Yu and the rest. Where would she go? Would she go to after Mo Zhao right away? Di Fui just got to know from Lan Jingyi that Rong Jialua was the main culprit. However, he addressed himself as though he was a lord while Gu Shijie referred to him as Mo Zhao. If Di Fui was not mistaken, it seemed that Rong Jialua had been completely possessed by Mo Zhao. It made sense that the Blood Underground Palace was built by Emo Zhao. Although Di Fui had never met Emo Zhao in person, he knew his kung fu quite well. Even if Emo Zhao had not fully recovered, an omen who had lived for a few thousand years was definitely not someone who could be easily defeated by a little girl like Gu Shijie, who only had a few decades of power. It was extremely dangerous for her to fight him alone. Perhaps there was not even a small chance for her to win. That was the first time Di Fui was so panicked that his fingers trembled in his sleeves. Lan Jingyi, who was engulfed in the wizardry barrier behind him, certainly sensed his emotion. She opened her eyes. Brother Huang, don't worry. She knows teleportation. She would be able to escape if she could not fight him. She could run very fast earlier, and we couldn't even catch up with her. It was terrible of her not to inform us after she came out. I think she is just trying to make everyone worry about her by hiding in somewhere. Before she could finish talking, a loud scream was heard. The wizardry barrier that carried Lan Jingyi cracked, and she fell helplessly from midair. Chapter 1697. How could Lan Jingyi survive if she falls in the sea of blood? Fortunately, a hand pulled her back, and she slumped into Lan Yu's embrace. Lan Yu was slow to react as he saw the mermaid fall from midair. He was lucky that she did not fall directly on top of him. He quickly pulled her collar and dragged her up to the ground. Unfortunately, Lan Jingyi's clothes ripped during the fall. She had only been given a robe from Di Fui for her to cover her pubic regions. Although the robe was quite big, Lan Yu unintentionally opened her top when he pulled her up. To make matters worse, her body slipped out from the robe and continued to fall. Lan Jingyi screamed again. Fortunately, Lan Yu was very quick this time. Hence, he managed to grab hold of her. However, he was stunned and quickly took a closer look because he touched something slippery. He had grabbed her fishtail as she hung upside down. It would only be a small matter if she hung upside down. However, she was naked. Lan Jingyi could not stop struggling because she was embarrassed and angry. Let go. Let go of me, you jerk. A gentleman should not look at something that did not belong to him, and should not act impolitely as well. Lan Yu had his morals and standards and was shocked to be called a jerk. Well, he decided to close his eyes and let go of Jan Jingyi. Therefore, Lan Jingyi fell again. In her panicked state, she finally formed a silk coil and hooked it on Lan Yu's waist. She then pulled forcefully and slumped into Lan Yu's embrace as she got up. Lan Yu was standing as straight as a pine tree to avoid any possible accusation again. Young lady, please behave yourself and don't simply submit yourself to me. The multiple falls had caused Lan Jingyi's wounds to tear open again. A lot of blood dripped from her wounds, and she almost fainted from the pain. Despite being in pain, she grabbed onto Lan Yu's belt because she was afraid to fall again. She begged with a trembling voice, save me. Lan Jingyi was not a very talented person. However, Di Fui made many pills with a secret recipe for her so that her kung fu would quickly upgrade. She was now at a level 9 spiritual power. Even though she achieved a level 9 spiritual power, her kung fu was rather lousy. As she was severely injured now, she could not even perform the flying magic technique, and had to depend on someone else to take the lead. Otherwise, she would have fallen into the underground palace and turned into a puddle of water. To stay alive, she had to leave her image aside and grab onto Lan Yu. When she looked around again, she realized Di Fui was gone. He has gone to find Gu Shijie. Lan Jingyi was sad and quite mad too. Lan Yu did not push her down because Di Fui left a reminder to him before he left. Try to treat her wounds and keep her alive. Lan Yu did not have the guts to disobey Celestial Master's order. Hence he had to keep her alive. However, it was really inappropriate or rather indecent for a mermaid to hang on his belt. Lan Yu truly believed that his image was valuable, and he did not want to embarrass himself. Therefore, he threw a dress to her. Young lady, it's embarrassing to run away naked. Could you put on that dress? Oh right, don't throw your tantrum on me, or else I'll probably kick you off if I'm not happy. Lan Jingyi remained silent. Her face was flushed, and she did not dare to say anything else. Lan Yu could not form a wizardry barrier to carry her, and he was not willing to carry her as well. Thus he pondered. Chapter 1698 Lon you could not form a wizardry barrier to carry her. And he did not want to do so anyway. In the end he retrieved a band out of nowhere and tied it on her waist. Hence, he brought her along whenever he flew, as if he was pulling a kite. When he was flying in the air, he even kindly reminded her, "Miss, it's inappropriate for a man and a lady to have physical contact. Thus, this is the only way I can bring you along. Don't ever break the band. Otherwise, I might not be able to save you in time." The wind up above the sky was as cold as a blade. Lan Jingyi felt as though she was almost torn apart by the chilly breeze. That was the first time she had committed such a great sin. However, she had no way to escape. She had no guts to break the band but struggled to hold it too. She wanted to cry, but she could not. Only cold sweat rolled down from her forehead like pearls. She felt depressed and frightened as she realized she was nothing in Huang Tu's heart. She was always someone easily replaceable, and she had never walked into his heart. But why would he suddenly treat her nicely over the past few months, after having neglected her for several years? He even healed her chronic illness and made pills for her. He elected her be a Heaven's Gift disciple, and also made a few of her other small dreams came true. She thought her efforts finally paid off. She thought he would finally see her. However, she had never imagined that she would return to her original state today. When Gu Shijie was missing, he immediately left her, and he did not even care about her injuries. Gu Shijie had gone missing. Di Fui has used all his tricks and resources to find her, but nothing worked. Di Fui had also searched the palace. The royal servants had no idea what was happening, but were only aware that their emperor had a private visit outside the palace. However, none of them knew when he would return. Every single spot in the palace have been searched by Di Fui, but he did not find any clues about Gu Shijie and Mo Zhao. But suddenly he made a small discovery. There was a secret passage inside the emperor's bedroom that led to the secret underground blood palace under the plum forest. When Di Fui entered the secret passage, the entire place was filled with poisonous blood and the walkways were corroded. In fact, Mu Feng and the other messengers were confused. The Lord hardly asked about Miss Gu these days, and they hardly had any interaction, even when they bumped into each other for some work. They thought the Lord had let go of Miss Gu and treated her as his normal subordinate. However, when she had gone missing, the Lord looked for her crazily as though he had lost his souls. For 3 days, the Lord had not eaten or taken a sip of water. He never stopped looking her. However, no one knew where Gu Shijie had gone. They had looked everywhere but still could not find her. Di Fui entered the stargazing observatory room. He was looking at the blinking stars up above the sky. He was completely focused on the new king star, and his facial expression changed. The bright new star suddenly dimmed. It looked to be tangled with the red devil star, and both were about to fall. She really went to find Mo Zhao. He had no idea what strategy she has used, but it appears as though she has chosen to die with Mo Zhao. Gu Shijie, don't do something silly please. Gu Shijie, your life is way more important than his. Please don't give up. Di Fui took a leap and rushed toward certain direction. This time, both of the stars had shown their exact location. Hopefully he could make it in time and nothing would have happened to her. Chapter 1699 Nothing serious could happen to her, right? Gu Shijie was the new lord of this world. How could she fall? Shijie, wait for me. Little Shijie, you're obsessed with me, huh? Did you fall for me? Otherwise, why would you follow me all the way here? There was a frozen sea at the most northern region in the continent, and there was also an ice land on that frozen sea. There was an abandoned land deep inside the ice land that was occupied by certain ferocious beasts, which were similar to penguins and polar bears. The snowflakes were as big as a straw mat, and the entire land was covered by ice mountains and glaciers. The place looked like the most rural area at the North Pole with a vile environment and bad weather. It was not a good place for spiritual growth because the area lacks spiritual energy. Thus, no one would come here even if they had all the time in the world. Yet strangely, inside a bottomless ice gap on the ice land, a magnetic and flirtatious voice was heard. Mo Zhao, I really have an obsession. I am obsessed with you because I want to kill you. An icy voice could be heard in response. Say, it's really sad. The man sighed. He then added 2 sentences from a poem. I gave my sincere heart to a beautiful lady. However, the beautiful lady did not appreciate it. There was an ice cave at the bottom of the ice. An river flowed within it. Countless icicles filled the stream of water. It shone in blue, and the chill could freeze someone to death. Gu Shijie was standing on an icicle while Emo Zhao stood on another icicle opposite her. Emo Zhao looked passionate as he glimpsed at Gu Shijie with his narrowed eyes, but his gaze looked depressed after he read the 2 sentences. It was as though he really got hurt in a relationship. Gu Shijie slightly pursed her lips. Apparently, she did not buy his passion. In fact, Emo Zhao was not supposed to know the poem. However, he had worked with Long Fan before, and Long Fan was a typical boastful man who showed off his talents by reading some poems in front of Mo Zhao. Mo Zhao sighed and added, Honestly, I'm really curious how you found me. Did you follow me all the way? I was sure to clear off any traces of me. And even Di Fui would not be able to find me. So how did you manage to find me? Mo Zhao took the opportunity to escape using the ground drilling technique after he destroyed his underground palace. He had gotten hold of the 2 items he wanted, which was the mermaid's tears and the fresh blood from the blue fox. He would completely recover once he ate those 2 things and converted its energy. He would only need 3 days and nights of practice and meditation. This was why Mo Zhao decided to run away instead of battle them head-on. He wanted to speed up his recovery progress first. He did not expect that regardless of where he escaped to, Gu Shijie would find him. In the beginning, he did think of catching Gu Shijie before running away. However, Gu Shijie was very smart and tricky. She immediately disappeared with her teleportation technique every time he saw her, and she would then disturb him again with a sneak attack once he began to meditate. That drove him nuts. Mo Zhao was helpless. He tried many different ways to escape, but Gu Shijie always found him. Throughout the process of escaping and chasing one another, both of them accidentally ran into this abandoned ice land and coincidentally bumped into each other at the bottom of an ice cap. Gu Shijie decided to give her all to kill him. She would not give up until he dies. However, since Mo Zhao had swallowed the blood of a blue fox more than 3 days ago, the blood would lose its effect since he did not manage to meditate. Mo Zhao was extremely frustrated. Thus, he was no longer happy even when he saw Gu Shijie. Instead, he felt extremely annoyed and intended to kill her. Chapter 1700. Mo Zhao was also very familiar with astrology, even though his knowledge was not as broad as Di Fui's. He knew the old king star would fall soon, and that a new king star would be born within this period. However, if the omen could kill the new king star before it matures, then the star of the omen would replace the new king star and become the new lord of the world. Of course, the people would need to worship the devil by then, and the structure of the continent would be changed entirely. He had this intention a long time ago. Hence, he was waiting for the new king star to look for him, because the new king star would be weak and easy to be killed at an earlier stage. Mo Zhao always kept an eye on the stars. However, the old king star always looked bright, and it did not seem to be falling anytime soon. Therefore, he thought the new king star would not be born that soon. At least not within the upcoming 60 years. Thus, he kept a very low profile and got himself hidden to avoid the Lord's suspicion. Unfortunately, when he realized that the new king star had already been born, it was already very bright and strong. Apparently, the old king star had done something to manipulate its growth. That was the reason it was very dim among the other stars before it reached its maturity. Hence, Mo Zhao missed the opportunity. Although Mo Zhao noticed the new king star in the sky, he could not identify who it belonged to. He could not even tell the exact location of the new king star. Hence, he had no way to kill his opponent and gain control of the continent. Initially, he planned to find him or her after he completely recovered. However, he was surprised to see the ray of 7 colored lights when Gu Shijie attacked him. That was the light specially emitted by the king star of the world. She was the new king star which he could not find. He honestly felt that God must be joking with him because the only woman he loved was the new king star he always wanted to kill. He was trying to figure out what he would do while he kept running away from her. He initially thought that he should marry the new king star and then destroy all her kung fu. He wanted her to be his empress to watch him conquer the world and celebrate his glory. However, he seemed to have given up on this idea now. He could always find a better woman in the future. However, there was only one world. Hence, he could only sacrifice her for his hegemony. At most, he would keep her souls and engrave his seal of the devil on her souls. In this case, she could never be a deity even if she resurrects in the future. As he narrowed his eyes, his fingers slowly clenched in his sleeves while he was staring at her. In fact, he was really curious about Gu Zijia's tracking ability. How could it be so amazing? Gu Shijia was staring back at him. She knew he had the intention to kill her. Instead of being fearful, she smiled. It was finally time for their final battle. She too had been waiting for this moment. Gu Shijia was in a good mood. Thus, she did not mind answering Mo Zhao. Actually, I've suspected you way too long ago. So, I've done something to your body. Unless you're willing to abandon your body, you should just stop running away, because it'll find you no matter where you go. Mo Zhao was speechless. He sighed before answering. I personally think I've hidden myself very well. Even Di Fui couldn't find me. How did you suspect me so early? He was always good at acting and had completely possessed Rong Jiaoyuo's body. He ate Rong Jiaoyuo's souls, and now he owned all of his memories. Chapter 1701. Since he had successfully taken over Rong Jiaoyuo's identity, how did Gu Shijio unravel his secret? Gu Shijio pinched her now pale red lips and answered calmly, Rong Jiaoyuo was once my friend. Gu Shijio knew her friends well enough, and that included Rong Jiaoyuo. One's temperament might differ due to the change in his or her social status. One's personality, however, would not change to an undistinguishable extent. Although he always put on his grim expression, Rong Jiaoyuo was naturally a little shy and introverted. For the past few months, Rong Jiaoyuo behaved somewhat similarly, with a lack of amiability, but Gu Shijio could still notice his mild sense of evilness through his eyes. That was when she started to suspect his true identity. Before this, she even tried to perform several tests on him secretly, but the results remained normal, which led her to assume that she overthought the whole situation. However, for the sake of his safety, she would perform some spells on Rong Jiaoyuo every time she visited the palace to expiate the sins of the sorrowful souls. Rong Jiaoyuo was the kind of person with the ability to bring troubles to himself. With or without his attachment with Mo Zhao, she would still look after him in secret. Even though he was still Rong Jiaoyuo, it would be best for her to know where to find him if one day he was unfortunately kidnapped by Mo Zhao. Mo Zhao was a smart man. He understood the underlying meaning of Gu Zijia's answer. Shijio, you are so kind to Rong Jiaoyuo. I was once your friend too, but why didn't you look after me like you did to him? He sighed. Gu Shijio responded with a smirk. I once treated you as a friend, but that was all in the past. Ever since he became Mo Zhao, he had been doing so many evil deeds that went against all moral codes in humanity. How could she treat him as a friend like before? Mo Zhao looked down and heaved a long sigh. However, you are still a friend to me. Think about it. Ever since we met, I have been treating you well and have never done anything to harm you. When you were in trouble, I was the one who helped you. I would not do anything to harm any of your friends, otherwise little fox would be long dead. Shijio, you have to face your conscience. I have always been so kind to you, but you never gave me any chances. You destroyed several underground palaces of mine, and injured me so severely for many times. Right now you are even trying to exterminate me. Think about it with your conscience. Is this right? Do I deserve this? He had a gift of rare eloquence. His voice was gentle yet attractive, like a warm stream that flowed smoothly into Gu Zijia's heart. While he talked, he focused his eyes so intensely with profound affection. He tried to make her fall for him. His eyes shone brightly, like a gleam of warm moonlight shrouding the land. Gu Shijio remained silent, and stared at him blankly without any expression. Mo Zhao tried harder. He took another step closer to her and asked, Shijio, will you let me go? Gu Shijio pursed her lips in return. What about the real Rong Jiaoyuo? Where is he? Mo Zhao sighed. Am I not Rong Jiaoyuo? You are not. You are Rong Che. The 8th prince, Rongjialua, treated you so well back in the day. How could you do something so evil to him? Shijio, he was nice to me, so I refused to lay my murderous hand on him. Didn't you know? He used to feel a strong sense of inferiority in front of you for always putting you in trouble. He wanted to become stronger, so he could finally fight alongside you. He wanted to be the man who could protect you, but his talent was nothing remarkable. He could never make it past level 9 with his own capability, nor could he become stronger than you. He was very sad and disappointed. Emo Zhao explained softly. So you took the opportunity to lure him into your vicious plan, and made him agree to the blood agreement? For you to own his body? Emo Zhao laughed. You cannot say that I lured him. He agreed willingly. I promised to keep his conscience. Chapter 1702 Rongjialo has been very nice to me. I will certainly not harm him. As you can see right now, we have come together as one. Emo Zhao continued. I believe it is not his conscience that you kept, but his memory. Did you engulf his souls as a whole? Gu Shijio continued. Emo Zhao rubbed his nose before answering. It is not nice for you to say that I swallowed his souls. I prefer to call it a union of our souls. Gu Shijio could not suppress the sadness in her eyes. She could almost understand why Emo Zhao chose to attach his soul to Rong Jiaoyuo's body. When Emo Zhao was still Rong Che, both of them had spent many years together, enough for Emo Zhao to understand Rong Jialua, which made it easier for him to manipulate his flaws. Moreover, Rong Che and Rong Jialua were brothers who shared the same bloodline. Emo Zhao had been using Rong Chi's body long enough to adapt to the Rong bloodline. Therefore, Rong Jialua was a good choice that would make the reattachment easier for him. Rong Jialua was, after all, an ordinary man in his 20s, so he was not a well-matched adversary for Emo Zhao, who had been cultivating his vital energy for thousands of years. Once Emo Zhao took over the body, Rong Jiaoyuo's soul would not be spared. It seemed like Rong Jialua would never come back again. He had truly become Emo Zhao. Hence, Gu Shijio was devastated by the realization. Rong Jialua had always been very kind to her. Without Emo Zhao, Rong Jialua could be an excellent ruler of the Feixing Kingdom with a good name for posterity. Unfortunately, his encounter with Emo Zhao made it all impossible. Emo Zhao had been controlling him for all his life. Before, Gu Shijio was still unable to overcome certain misgivings, but she changed her mind. There would be no scruple for her anymore. She looked at Emo Zhao fixedly. There is one more thing that I do not understand. Say it. You know I do not have the heart to reject you. In the secret blood palace. What did you mean when you said you did not expect it to be me? Gu Shijio knew that there would be some underlying meaning in his words. Emo Zhao returned her question with a smile. Shijio, can you read the star chart? Gu Shijio was perplexed, as she did not understand what it had to do with the star chart. A flashback suddenly occurred to her. She remembered Di Fui once showed her the astrological chart, which among many stars, she found the biggest star that represented Di Fui, but failed to find the star for her own. Di Fui did not point it out to her either. She thought that she must be too insignificant to be on the chart, so she did not question any further. Emo Zhao's sudden question made her rethink the entire situation. Did Emo Zhao recognize her star from the star chart? She wondered if she had already acquired a position among the stars with her present capability, but she had no idea which one. The real star chart could only be revealed at certain locations. The ordinary night sky left no trace of each star's position. She answered with another question instead. What difference would it make if I can or cannot read it? Emo Zhao kept his eyes on her smilingly. He tried to find some clues from her expression. Although she managed to skip the question, he was sure to assume that she was still unaware of her true identity from the way she responded. It would be fun for Emo Zhao. Under normal circumstances, the old King Star would protect the new King Star as part of his or her obligation. He would keep the heir safe when necessary, and teach the new King Star the ability to guard the world by continuing the work of the predecessor. The old King Star should never watch over the new King Star so extensively to the point of going against God's will. However, he could tell that the old King Star had done a lot for her from the star chart. The level of commitment had gone way beyond the relationship between a predecessor and an heir. Chapter 1703. 1703. Logically speaking, the old King Star should have passed the stargazing ability to the new King Star. However, she appeared to know nothing about it. It seemed that the former King Star did not wish for the incoming King Star to find out the truth about their change of power. He genuinely cared for her, which was something very unusual. There was only one possibility. The old and new King Stars must be lovers, who swore to love as long as they both should live. The old King Star must be trying to avoid breaking her heart by not telling her the truth of his doom. The old King Star would use any reasons, even with his betrayal, to cause them to split before his final days. He would break her heart entirely, so she was no longer concerned about his existence. He would then hide from the world. It was normal for him to disappear for a few years, even for a few decades. If everything had been properly arranged, the new King Star would never find out the truth about the death of the old King Star. His follower would take his form and make an occasional appearance once every few years, so the world would still think that he was still alive. After the heartbreak, the new King Star would never ask anything about the old King Star ever again. She would never find out about his death. Emo Zhao thought to himself. The only one that was entangled with Gu Shijie was Di Fui. It was normal for Di Fui to look after Gu Shijie, but not the Lord, unless the Lord was indeed Di Fui. Di Fui could be the embodiment of the Lord. Emo Zhao was delighted at this sudden realization. He had heard about the breakup between Gu Shijie and Di Fui. Before this, he did not quite understand why their relationship would end up in ruins, given that both of them were so madly in love, so much so that they would die for one another. He finally understood it all. That was how it was. Di Fui must have been scheming his plan for quite a while. He turned to look at Gu Shijie with an intense gaze and questioned her. Di Fui is the Lord, right? Gu Shijie was utterly surprised, but she gave nothing away on her face. What nonsense are you talking about? She did not know how he came up with the assumption. Emo Zhao looked away and smiled scornfully. He did not intend to answer Gu Zijie's confusion. If I knew better that they were the same man, I should have tortured him to death while he was still in my underground palace. It was a great remorse. Emo Zhao repented of his lost opportunity so immensely. He did not realize that the Lord was once in his hand, but he let him escape so easily. Emo Zhao gave Gu Shijie a look so full of pity. He wondered how she would react when she found out about the truth. Would she be mentally devastated? He decided to wait until Di Fui's death before uncovering the painful truth. Her expressions would be fascinating. Di Fui's painstaking effort would be all wasted away. He would take it as a revenge for all the suppression that he had to suffer for so many years. The idea sounded very interesting. Emo Zhao's mind started to be bombarded with many more crazy ideas. He no longer wanted to murder Gu Shijie, at least for now. He would wait until the day she found out about the truth. The urge to kill Gu Shijie started to fade. He should take it easy and wait for the death of the old King Star before he started to take any action. As long as Lan Weihu was still alive, he could still extract the blood from her heart. Also, he still had some mermaid tears left. For the past few days he had to bustle in and out all because of Gu Shijie. She was very excellent in causing him all sorts of disturbances. All he needed was a quiet place to practice his kung fu and cultivate his vital energy, so he had to keep running away from her. Chapter 1704. 1704. Emo Zhao had come round to this idea now, so there was no need for him to rush into his practice. He had taken over Rong Jiaoyuo's body. All that was left was for him to recover fully. Furthermore, Gu Shijie was no match to him if he wanted to hurt her right now. It would take him half a day to defeat her. He would then wait for the death of Di Fui before taking any actions. While he was still chatting with Gu Shijie, he would walk around between the cracks of the ice. His steps appeared to be random, but he was trying to set up a strategy to seal the place so that there was no place she could run. Gu Shijie watched cautiously as he continued to walk around. He trod the area from end to end, so she followed his steps. She was a little frustrated. From time to time, she would give the icicles on the banks a kick. Although the ice towers were unusually strong, Gu Zijia's strength was enough to kick them off their ground. Some of them were cheekily aimed at Emo Zhao. Certainly, Emo Zhao would not allow himself to be hit by these ice towers. He would either flip the ice away with his sleeve or swiftly avoid them. He remained untouched. Gu Shijio could tell that there was an underlying meaning in Emo Zhao's words, but she could not figure out the hidden message. She no longer wanted to make any assumptions. Making any assumptions was exhausting, and Gu Shijio was too tired to think about it at the moment. She only had one goal, which was to kill Emo Zhao. She needed revenge on behalf of Little Fox, Rong Jialua, the innocent people he had hurt, and also herself. She had to destroy the scourge of mass destruction. She was not afraid to die in a fight with him. She was also devising a strategy, which would cause both of them to be either severely injured or dead. They continued to talk, but Emo Zhao was a very careful person. He did not let any of his thoughts slip out of his mouth. Gu Shijio only responded faintly, so he would not find out anything from her words. She was an expert in array formation, so she could see that Emo Zhao was secretly planning his strategy. He must be desperate to catch her, or even kill her. She smirked, for it was still uncertain who would be dead at the end. She knew that her kung fu was no match to Emo Zhao's, but she had her ways. She learned a strategy from an exorcist that she met in her previous life. It was a plan that could be the ultimate kill. However, the plan must come with a great price. Unless it were really necessary, no one would execute the plan. Now was the time. It was finally time for her to carry out the strategy. Although Emo Zhao was also an expert in array formation, his knowledge in that particular strategy was not as good as hers. He took a stroll at the banks for nearly half an hour. Finally, he came to a stop and looked at Gu Shijio fixedly, who was still standing opposite him. Gu Shijio raised her head and their eyes met. Emo Zhao gave her a gentle smile, but it somehow looked devilish. Shijio, I see that you like to follow my footsteps. Stop running away, will you? Gu Shijio frowned but remained silent. Emo Zhao took a swift leap and landed next to her. He had already secured a wizardry barrier in all the ice cracks. Hence, her teleportation technique within the barrier would not work. She could no longer escape. The placement of the wizardry barrier was very physically draining, especially to Emo Zhao's spiritual power. With the execution of the plan, he would need at least half a month of recovery to begin his practice again. He was resigned to the fact that he would stop his practice for a little while. Otherwise, he would not perform the wizardry barrier at this critical point. He was very determined to get Gu Shijio this time. Certainly, he had never paid any attention to her kung fu capability. He was aware that her kung fu was good, but nothing compared to his standard. If they had to fight, she would not be able to resist more than 70 to 80 of his martial styles. Gu Shijio smiled charmingly. You'd better not run away this time. Whoever runs is a coward. Let's put an end to this. Chapter 1705. 1705 Emo Zhao did not expect Gu Shijio to be so direct toward him. Soon he laughed. All right. Whoever runs is a coward. Shijio, I will make sure you know my strength. He had decided to take her down forcibly this time by making her his woman. If he could never get her heart, he could at least have her body. He wanted to see her suffer in tears. He would rather have her destroyed if he could not have her. He opened up his palm to summon his weapon. A blood-red sword formed immediately in his hand. The edge of his sword was flaming, but its effect was cold. Immediately after its emergence, there came a loud, wailing scream from its ferocious evil spirits. The glacier, which had been actively streaming for tens of thousands of years, froze immediately when the sword appeared. The coldness was unbearable, as though piercing through Gu Zijia's skin. Gu Shijio flipped the corner of her sleeves and summoned a flexible rope in her hand. It was a rope of 7-colored gleam, and was as soft and nimble as a whip. Her hand gestured a little, and the flexible weapon straightened up instantly. The body of the rope was shimmering with many colors. It was quite majestic. She used to have an arsenal of great weapons from Difui. However, since she broke up with Difui, she sent all the things back to him. She even stopped using all the kung fu techniques that he taught her. She used the power of her soul to create a flexible rope. It immediately surrounded the entire chilly environment with a warm halo. Under the influence of the 7-colored flexible rope, beautiful glowing rays started to shine in all directions on the ice, forming a bright and dazzling view. Emo Zhao looked at the presentation of her flexible rope and was perplexed. He did not expect Gu Shijie to use this as her weapon. As far as he was concerned, she was better with swords. Your weapon is quite fancy. Did Di Fui give it to you? Gu Shijie responded scornfully. It looks fancy, but is lethal enough to kill you. With a stretch, the flexible rope extended towards Emo Zhao. Emo Zhao laughed out loud despite the impending danger. All right, I would like to see how this soft weapon is going to kill me. The sword used by Emo Zhao was an excellent weapon from ancient evil times. There was nothing that it could not cut through. It could effortlessly destroy a sword that was made of diamond and shatter it into pieces. More importantly, many sorrowful evil spirits had been confined by the power of the sword. In every movement of the sword, the evil spirits further enhanced the strength of the sword, making it powerful enough to kill both gods and celestial beings. He had been keeping the sword for his battle against the Lord. Now he had to use it against Gu Shijie instead. If the sword hit Gu Shijie, she would be immediately frozen into an ice cube and Emo Zhao could finally do anything to her as he pleased. The tip of the sword and the rope met in a clash and Emo Zhao was very hopeful that the power of his evil spirits could affect Gu Zijie's body through the flexible rope, thus freezing every inch of her limbs. To his surprise, the flexible rope shone out a gleam of powerful 7-colored rays that immediately purified the grievance of the bloody red evil spirits. He was utterly surprised and withdrew his sword. A few sorrowful souls had just been expiated from their grief through the gleam of the 7-colored ray. You. He looked at her with an utter surprise. What kind of kung fu is that? He had never seen anything like it. The one that can kill you. Gu Zijie's flexible rope turned into a colorful mirage and launched another attack towards Emo Zhao. The 7-colored mirage shone forth with all its strength. There were many patterns emerging on the surface of the rope, as though countless of petals falling from the sky. Wherever the petals landed, it was as though spring had arrived. Warm breezes of spring air swept across the frozen glacier, thus making the stream lively again. Emo Zhao shook his head in disbelief. The kung fu that Gu Shijie was performing was very strange, unlike anything that he had ever seen. Moreover, the strength of the kung fu was powerful, comparable to the power of the Lord himself. Chapter 1706. 1706. Emo Zhao thought about it, and was confused. Gu Zijie's spiritual power was not high enough to perform something so powerful. How did she do it? He tried to avoid the strikes on the side of the riverbank, while trying to solve his confusion. However, his confusion would remain unanswered, as Gu Shijie would never explain it to him. Gu Shijie pressed him with every step that she took. Her odd moves emerged in an endless flow, making it harder for Emo Zhao to avoid. He never thought that the fight would require his full strength, but after a few encounters with Gu Shijie, he finally understood that he needed to put in all his efforts to win the fight. Otherwise, he would be injured by her. His power began to sink in. Finally, he was able to utilize all of his strength. His moves were getting more merciless and tricky. The fight by the riverbank became increasingly vigorous. An hour passed. Then another hour passed. The glacier was melted and frozen again multiple times over the fight. Also, the ice towers at the riverbank were greatly affected by their battle and shattered into powder. The surrounding ice walls started to crumble, causing snow slides from the tip of the iceberg. Slowly but surely, the appearance of the area had been completely altered. It looked like a battlefield now. Although the appearance changed, their wizardry barriers remained unaffected. Gu Shijie could not use her teleportation technique, and Emo Zhao could not run away from her. He wanted to escape. He knew that this was too risky a fight for him at this stage. Gu Zijie's body was surrounded by a faint glow throughout the battle. When his sword touched the halo, it only managed to bruise her, causing her to spit out a little blood. No vitals were harmed, so she could still fight. Whenever she had the opportunity to injure him, she could not care less about his sword that was aiming at her chest or her head. She whipped the flexible rope unsparingly, showing him no sense of mercy at all by giving him more and more injuries. Emo Zhao would not mind physical injuries. However, there seemed to be some incarnations on his wounds as well that could purify the devilish influence from his body. The pain seemed to pierce into his bones, and it felt 10 times more painful than a normal injury. Apparently, she was ready to die in the battle with him, but Emo Zhao was not. He tried to escape from the battle a number of times, but was halted by a barrier set up by Gu Shijio. He finally knew that Gu Shijio had also set up a wizardry barrier to prevent him from running away. Toward the end of the fight, he could no longer hold back his frustration. Gu Shijio, what kind of spell have you performed here? He asked loudly. Gu Shijio was injured as well. There was some blood at the corner of her mouth. With a smirk, she threw him an icy glance. The spell that can prevent you from escaping. Emo Zhao, you will never make it out unless you kill me. Emo Zhao did not know what to say. He had tried several ways to escape, but all failed. There was a fierce and brutal look in his eyes. All right then, I will be sure to kill you. He put his escape plan aside and launched a series of savagely violent attacks at Gu Shijio. He assumed that Gu Shijio must have taken some pills that allowed her spiritual power to advance greatly. However, the effect of the pills would not last long, just like the power of demon disintegration dharma. Although one's kung fu could be greatly increased by a few folds, the effects would not last longer than 2 hours. When the time came, he would slowly torture her. Surprisingly, none of them backed out in exhaustion even after 2 hours of intense battle. On the contrary to his expectation, the strength of her 7-colored ray grew even more vibrant. Chapter 1707. 1707. The dazzling battlefield marveled Emo Zhao. There were many injuries all over his body, and the power of the sorrowful souls became gradually weaker under the radiance of the 7-colored rays. He would most probably lose his life. Before, he was a little perplexed that Gu Shijio chose to fight him alone rather than having her friends to help. Now he finally understood. The kung fu that Gu Shijio used was very lethal. She was confident that she could win this fight. It was not easy for Emo Zhao to be reincarnated, so he certainly did not want to end his life here. He wanted to uncover some parts of the truth to distract her, but Gu Zijia's strategy became more and more brutal. Her strikes grew more frequent, leaving him no chance to say anything. There was no room for distraction. If he insisted on talking, his body would be split in half under her majestic rope, and he would never be able to put the pieces of his body back again. All of their attention was completely focused on the battle of life and death before them. None of them heard any sound from the outside of the wizardry barrier. There seemed to be a man, shouting out loud from outside the barrier. For the first time ever, Difui felt as though he was going crazy. On his way, waves of anxiety hit him continuously. He tried to increase his speed, but it was still too slow for him. The place was too far away. Difui did not expect them to end up in a place so far away. Both of them had only gone missing for 3 days, and yet they managed to end up where the glacier was, tens of thousands of miles away. Gu Zijia's body was prone to coldness, so that the place would be a significant disadvantage to her. Also, she was indeed not a match to Emo Zhao. Even with all his strength, Difui needed at least 3 hours to get to where she was. 3 hours were more than enough for any misfortunes to happen. He was too anxious to care about the obstacles along his journey and crashed into a few trees. He had even tried to contact her by using the jade tablet while he was on his way, but received no answer. She seemed to have made up her mind to fight Emo Zhao until the very end. She did not even call for help. Was Gu Shijio trying to kill herself? Gu Shijio, please do not do anything stupid. Even with all your spiritual power, you are still incomparable to Emo Zhao. You are only throwing away your own life. He finally made it to the deserted land of ice, and found the place where the star chart had been showing him. From a distance, he could see the radiance of 7-colored rays bursting out in the air. There was also a mix of some red and multicolored light, battling against one another. Loud strikes could be heard in the distance, followed by the eye-catching gleams. The explosive sound was enough to shake the grounds. Many layers of ice were starting to break apart. The icebergs were crumbling one by one. Fortunately, there was no one around to witness the fight. If the same battle happened in a populated area, the entire town would be destroyed by now. When Difui finally saw the gleaming seven-colored ray, his face turned pale. He knew how well Gu Zijia's kung fu was, so the seven-colored ray came as no surprise. However, it was the intensity that astonished him the most, as it should not be so bright and colorful. Unless her power had been significantly advanced, it was impossible for her to get the result. No power could be instantly increased to such a great extent in such a short time. Chapter 1708. 1708. There was a chance that Gu Shijie was using some forbidden magic, like the demon disintegration dharma. The demon disintegration dharma could indeed achieve the same result, but the use of this power came with a high price to pay. After performing the spell, some would lose most of their spiritual power and become disabled. In the worst-case scenario, he or she would die right away. Difui had to stop her. There were ways to stop her from performing the demon disintegration dharma. From the looks of her seven-colored ray, her life seemed to be coming to an end. He had to stop her as soon as possible. He lunged forward abruptly, only to be bounced back by an invisible barrier. It must be a wizardry barrier. Difui was very skilled in breaking wizardry barriers. He was impatient of all this waiting, so he started to break in without recognizing the nature of the wizardry barrier. He chose to use the strongest way to make sure the barrier could be broken at his first attempt. A flash of white rays emerged as he proceeded to smash the barrier. The method was the most useful way that could be used to break through all kinds of barriers, like a multi-purpose tool or master key. To his surprise, he only managed to tremble the barrier very lightly. It did not seem to break apart at all. He took a look at Gu Shijie, who was now fighting violently within the barrier. All of a sudden, her body started to shake, as though she had just taken a great punch. Soon, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Mo Zhao seized the opportunity to attack her head-on, but she managed to turn around and avoid it. The wizardry barrier that Gu Shijie made was rather strong. Looking in from the outside of the barrier, Difui could only witness the rapid battle by recognizing the vibrant flashes and shadows of swords. He could not see their faces, as they were standing too far away from the barrier. However, he could see that she spat out a mouthful of blood. He was immediately stunned and started to study the wizardry barrier. He touched the surface lightly with the tip of his fingers. There was a warm, familiar sense. Without a doubt, the barrier was set up by Gu Shijie. However, the type of barrier that she used was nothing he had seen or heard about. The anima of the wizardry barrier was very intense, sending forth a delicate sense of her soul, as though the barrier was supported solely by the power of her soul. His facial expression changed abruptly. If the barrier was supported by the power of her soul, breaking the barrier was the same as launching an attack against her. Setting up a wizardry barrier by channeling one's soul was a very risky move. Anyone who wished to break the barrier would have to attack the soul from the one who set it up. If the barrier were placed at a location full of practitioners, it would be suicidal. When did she learn how to set up a wizardry barrier by channeling the power of her soul? He had never taught her so. There were only two possible ways to break the barrier. Either the creator willingly disarms it, or the creator dies. Difui's hands started to tremble. He tried to perform the ground drilling technique, but it was impossible for him to penetrate through. Apparently, she sealed off the barrier from every possible corner. No one could ever make it through. Shijie, open up the barrier. Let me in. He screamed out loud. His spiritual power allowed him to exert a great force for his voice to penetrate through the barrier. Regardless of the distance, be it a few miles or a few hundred miles, he was sure that his message would be conveyed. His voice reverberated from the heights of the land, like echoes in an empty valley. However, the two people in the wizardry barrier did not seem to notice him at all. He refused to give up and tried a few times more. He even used all sorts of abilities that he knew, but could not get her attention. The fight went on vigorously. Was the wizardry barrier soundproof? He could hear the sound of their battle. Was it only soundproof from the outside? Or was she trying to avoid distractions? Difui used to be able to stay calm and confident, no matter how serious the issue at hand was, But for the first time, he started to tremble helplessly as his anxiety took over his mind. Chapter 1709. 1709. It was a mess in the wizardry barrier. Di Fui tried to use a few milder methods to break the barrier, but they were useless. Instead, Gu Shijie was hurt even more with his every attempt. It was so dangerous inside that she almost lost her arm under Emo Zhao's violent attacks. Blood started to flow from her wound, staining her entire left arm in red. Di Fui dared not make another move. He could no longer calm himself down. Driven by anxiety, his limbs went cold. It was the first time for him to know how fear felt like. His emotions were whirling in a chaotic jumble. He had lost his usual sense of thought. After contemplating for a while, he immediately contacted Long Sai. Although he had suspended Long Sai's status as a Heaven's Gift disciple, he did not confiscate his jade tablet. He hoped that Long Sai still kept it close to him. Luckily, Long Sai did not lose the jade tablet. He picked up the call immediately. Celestial Master Zhua, have you found Shijie? Di Fui was not in the mood for some unnecessary small talk. Has she learned any unusual spell before? It is a spell that can channel the power of her soul to set up a wizardry barrier. He quickly briefed Long Sai about the characteristics of the barrier, hoping that Long Sai would have a clue. Long Sai's tone changed immediately. Where is she? Is she going after Emo Zhao? Is she risking her life to fight against him? Di Fui did not conceal any information from him. He answered with the exact location and their current situation before he continued. Do you know about the wizardry barrier? How do I break it? Long Sai's voice ripped through the air. Di Fui, you are driving her to her death. She is ready to die with Emo Zhao in the fight. Di Fui took a deep breath. I am finding ways to save her. Tell me the way, so I can break through the barrier and get her out from danger. She is still alive right now. Long Sai answered in disbelief. Save her? I am afraid that there is no other way. The barrier was made from the soul-condemning spell. It will not be deactivated unless the creator is dead. What? What do you mean? Di Fui's voice started to tremble. There was no way he could tell if Long Sai was crying or laughing. She learned it from a great exorcist back in the modern days. The exorcist was a descendant of the Niwa Empress. Her skill in exorcism was beyond compare. Shijie stayed with her for some time to learn her kung fu, including the Holy Spirit wizardry barrier and the soul-condemning spell. The two spells complement one another in a sequence. Once it is activated, it will immediately advance the creator's power by 5 folds, but it can only be deactivated when one of them, the creator or the opponent, dies. No outsider can play a part in the battle. Please do not attempt to break into the barrier that she made. It would be the equivalent of attacking her. You will kill her, just like what Emo Zhao wishes. Di Fui's body froze. He could not get himself together. His ears started to buzz. He stared blankly at Gu Shijie, who was currently fluttering in the air and fighting vigorously. He believed that she was aware of his presence. She was the one who made the wizardry barrier. How could she not notice it when someone attacked it? She could not care less. She did not even bother to turn her eyes to check it out. She seemed to be very determined to die. Had she lost all hope to live? She seemed to have let the past go. The way she looked at him was as though he was a stranger. She accepted him as a normal friend and even accomplished some tasks together just before this battle. He thought that she had already recovered from the past and started to become stronger on her own. He finally realized that she had only been acting. All she wanted was to kill herself. Long Sai lost all hope too. Di Fui, she loves you so much that she is willing to do anything for you. Chapter 1710. 1710. Gu Shijie always lacked love because she was born an orphan. Hence, she didn't trust anyone and always protected herself. She didn't want to be hurt, but she opened up to you. I've talked to her before she achieved a level 9 spiritual power. She told me she wants to work harder on her practice because she wanted to be with you forever, as she didn't want you to be alone. When you came out of the Forbidden Land together, she came to visit me and couldn't stop talking about you. She was thrilled that time because she finally achieved a level 10 spiritual power, and was able to fight side by side with you. She said she wanted to share your burden. At that time, she was living in heaven and never stopped dreaming about both of your future. Do you know why I was willing to give up? It's because of this. I knew she had completely fallen for you and she could never see anyone else anymore. Even if you die, she will follow you without turning back. Difui clenched the jade tablet tightly as he listened to Long sigh. Difui, she loved you so much. How could you be so cruel to her? You sent her up to the sky and then kicked her down to hell. Do you know how she lived these days? Do you know she hides everything in her heart and couldn't sleep every night? You've ruined all her confidence. Although she didn't tell me what exactly happened between the two of you, she had mentioned a little about it when she was still unconscious while swapping her body. She felt she was just a joke to you because she was a clone in her previous life and this life. And now even the soul was not hers. She was exhausted from living. Perhaps she shouldn't have come to this world. She knew you didn't want her anymore, but she still could not let you go. She was very sad. She didn't want to be a substitute. She said you wanted her to die because your beloved could not live if she doesn't die. Long Sai's words were like thousands of blades stabbing Difui's heart simultaneously. His face gradually turned pale. His body was trembling as his hands were placed on top of the barrier. He felt numb and weak to the extent that he almost fell to the ground. He looked at Gu Shijio who was inside the wizardry barrier, and he realized her responses began to slow down. She has almost used up all of her power and energy. Emo Zhao was not in good condition either. However, he could continue to fight. It seemed inevitable that Gu Shijio would die in Emo Zhao's hands. While Emo Zhao hated her to his blood and bones now, he would not only kill Gu Zijia's body once he wins the battle, but also destroy her souls. By that time, that would be the end of Gu Zijia's life. Difui planned everything for her all these years. He has made so many sacrifices for her. He definitely would not accept such a result. A seven-colored light slowly formed in Difui's palms. He knew a divine power which could break the wizardry barrier. There was no wizardry barrier that it could not break, because the destructive power was extremely strong. However, it would consume a lot of his power and energy. Hence, it has never used it before. Difui could not be bothered anymore. Perhaps, her life would be at risk when he broke her wizardry barrier, but he could safeguard her souls. He had a solution to resurrect her as long as her souls were complete. When Difui about to launch his power, he suddenly heard Emo Zhao laughed out loud in the wizardry barrier. Gu Shijio, you've lost. You. Before he managed to finish his arrogant speech, he suddenly paused as he felt as though a sword sliced him. Difui immediately lifted his head, and he saw a scene which was horrible enough to make his soul scatter. The sword in Emo Zhao's hand poked into Gu Zijia's chest and penetrated through her back. At the same time, the rope in Gu Zijia's hand had gone into Emo Zhao's mouth and penetrated his head. A seven-colored light was shining all over the place as it engulfed Emo Zhao's body with a strong purifying energy. Chapter 1711. 1711 Gu Shijio said with an icy tone as she gasped, "You're the loser." Emo Zhao's eyeballs were moving uncontrollably as he glared at Gu Shijio angrily. He seemed to want to say something, but all that she could hear was a strange sound in his throat. He did not manage to say anything in the end. He slumped on the ground helplessly. His gaze was filled with sympathy and sadness. He was dead. The flexible rope was indeed a unique weapon which had a powerful effect of purification. It killed Emo Zhao's physical body as well as his soul's. Gu Shijio stumbled forward, and her body also slumped on the snow. Almost the same time, the wizardry barrier had finally cracked. Difui rushed in and carried her. "Shijio. It would be fine. She would be fine. She has killed Emo Zhao, and there was only an injury on her chest. He could save her. She would be fine." His trembling fingers held on the sword which penetrated her chest. All the evil wraiths in the sword has been purified by Gu Shijio. Difui used his spiritual power, and the sword immediately vanished. Since Difui was very knowledge in the field of medicine, he knew the sword did not penetrate her heart but it did go through one of her organs. With a glance, he knew it was hazardous. He could quickly help her to reconnect all the broken vessels and make her survive. "Don't worry, I'll save you." Shijiao will save you. He carried her and pressed on her chest. His voice turned hoarse, but he was still relatively firm. Shijiao, follow my spiritual power. It'll treat you. He was glad at the moment he rushed in. That was because the two people in the wizardry barrier had finally marked the end of the battle. Emo Zhao was dead while Gu Shijiao survived. He could not believe that she killed Emo Zhao alone with her power. Once again, she made another miracle. Nothing was more important than her survival. Thus, the very first thing Di Fui did when he came in was to treat her injury. His limbs were icy. Hence, he did not realize her body was already frozen when he first carried her. Only when he pressed on her chest, and did not feel her familiar, yet strong heartbeat, did he realize something was wrong. Her body was very soft and cold. It was as if he was hugging a corpse. Although her wound was big, the bleeding was not that serious. How could this happen? Di Fui's fingers were shaky as he checked her breath and pulse. He almost could not sense her pulse, and she seemed to have stopped breathing. The end of her life. That was the end of her life. Gu Shijiao helplessly lied in his arms. She got slightly stiff when he hugged her as though she wanted to struggle. However, Di Fui was hugging her tightly, and she eventually gave up. However, both of her arms lied on her sides because she did not intend to return his hug. After all the hassles, she finally returned to his embrace. No one knew how much suffering she had gone through. Nobody knew how much hassles she has gone through to forget about it. Now, her heart was so painful when she returned to this embrace again. Her eyelashes trembled, and her gaze has finally stopped on his face. He was still wearing a mask with only his eyes exposed. As usual, his eyes were so charming, and she used to look at his eyes every time she lied in his embrace. Chapter 1712. 1712. Di Fui was undoubtedly a very handsome man. Gu Zijia's heart always raced every time he looked into her eyes. However, at that very moment, her heart no longer beat irregularly. Everything she saw was dark, and her vision was getting blurry. She could not see clearly, but she could feel that his eyes were now wet. Was he sad for her? Did he cry? Did he feel sympathy for her? Perhaps he did feel sad for her. However, she did not want his sympathy. What she wanted he could never give, while what he could give her now she no longer wanted. All she could hear was a buzzing and ringing sound. She could not hear anything he said. Di Fui was terrified because he realized that her vision was getting blurred, and that she could not hear anything. Besides that, he could see a glow slowly spreading out from her body. That was a sign that her souls would soon disappear. His entire body was trembling because he knew he was going to lose her, and yet he had no way to change it. Shijiao. Gu Shijiao. Please don't give up. Shijiao, please stay. Listen to me. I didn't give up on you. You're always the one I loved. Shijiao, listen to me. Be a good girl, okay? Listen to me. Gather your spirits with the soul condensation spell. I know you can do it. Wait until you recover. I'll slowly explain everything to you. Shijiao. While he was talking, he also tried his best to transfer spiritual power into her body, so that blood could circulate again in her hardened blood vessels. He also used other spells and tried his best to collect her broken souls. Suddenly, Di Fui had an idea and removed his mask so that she could see his lips. He knew she could read lips, hence she would know what he was talking about. Gu Shijiao smiled with her lips curved upward, but Di Fui soon realized that her gaze was on his hair. Her vision was blurred, but she could recognize his white hair. She reluctantly lifted her hand from her side, and her fingertips touched his silver hair. Her lips were moving as she mumbled softly. Di Fui managed to hear it clearly. I don't like you with white hair. I'm sad when I saw that your hair turned white. He hugged her tightly. I'll make it black again. Shijiao, I'll make the white hair black again. Could you stay, please? His voice was trembling as he tried to negotiate with her and suppress his fear. Her fingers were still rubbing his hair, but everything in front of her had turned black. She felt droplets of warm water drip on her face. However, it could never warm up her frozen skin. Di Fui, she said gently, are you crying for me? You should be happy after I die. I've tried my best to maintain this body. It's perfect now, don't worry. You can call that soul back after I die. However, if it returns with my memories, please remove them. I don't want to come to this world again. I don't want to be anyone's substitute. I'll give Longjinka back to you. She could not see or hear anything anymore but only stared at the sky blankly. Although she had been fighting in the dark for so long, she hated it. Unfortunately, she was now helplessly engulfed by the dark. The unforeseen life has finally come to an end. Chapter 1713. 1713. Wuxia once tried very hard to be immortal. Unfortunately, it was all just a dream now. She chose to die with Mo Zhao, to get revenge for her friends, and to kill a devil for the world. She had certainly proved her capabilities as well. Subconsciously, she wanted to prove her abilities in front of Difui. She wanted to show him that she was not that bad compared to Longjinka. Why could he not try just to love her? Unfortunately, she did not bring it up even until the end, because she felt that it was not true love if she had to beg for it. Since he only loved Longjinka from the beginning until the end, she would return Longjinka to him. She would fulfill his wish and her wish as well. Difui, I wish we will never see each other again, even in our next life. But there was no next life for her anymore. She would disappear as her souls had to pay the price for forming that array. Back then, her exorcist friend just randomly mentioned about the array to her. However, she could not stop begging her friend to teach her that skill. Her friend felt helpless and he also thought she could never use it since she didn't even have any spiritual power. Hence, he taught her all the theories and vital tricks. She only learned it out of curiosity, and she never expected that it could be used someday in the future. Perhaps it was fate. However, it was not important anymore because everything would be gone soon along with her. Difui, I've never regretted falling in love with you. However, if I can ever choose again, I wish to have never met you. Her hands fell from his hair, and she slowly closed her eyes. A teardrop slowly rolled down from the end of her eye. Difui knelt on the ground. She could not hear any of his explanations, and none of the spells worked on her. The only thing he could do was to watch as she stopped breathing with her eyes closed. A few broken souls with 7-colored rays detached from her body and rose to the sky. Difui was very pale. He used all his power to collect the broken souls. Wuxia, you can't just die. This is not your end. This shouldn't be your end. You haven't listened to my explanation. You didn't know you're the only one I love. No one else. Shijio, give me a chance, please? Shijio, please, don't be so cruel. Difui could collect souls. Regardless of who was the one died in front of him, he could collect all the souls as long as he wanted, even if the souls disappeared in front of him. The only exception thus far was mermaid souls. Unfortunately, he could not collect Wuxia's broken souls too. Those 7-colored souls were untouchable. It slowly rose from his palms and influx into the snow and then to the sky. The snowflakes were flying in the sky as the wind blew. The lonely snowland seemed to be as cold as usual. Since the fierce battle, the appearance of the ice mountains, glacier, and ice towers had changed. Everything had changed. However, how many people would know the reason? Everything would go back to usual in due time. Non-living things would look the same every year even after decades. However, the only difference would be the people who looked at them. The ice mountain, the glacier, and the ice towers would appear again. What about humans? Would those who have passed away come back again someday? Difui had been sitting in the snow with her corpse for 3 days and nights until Long Sai arrived with the 4 messengers. Long Sai, who was usually always a polite person, almost cursed all of his ancestors. After he finished lecturing Difui that day, he did not hear a single reply from him. Chapter 1714. 1714. Difui had switched off the jade tablet, but Long Sai did not want to give up. Hence, he tried to contact Difui again while rushing to find him. However, Difui refused to answer the call even though his jade tablet had blinked a few hundred times. He almost drove Long Sai nuts. Long Sai was not as powerful now, and he was before. Therefore, he could not set the speed of his vehicle to the maximum. Otherwise, he would freeze to death. Fortunately, he bumped into the 4 messengers along the journey who were looking for their lord. Hence, they were rushed over together. Long Sai had a bad feeling about everything, but he still tried to be a little hopeful. What if Gu Shijie won the battle in the wizardry barrier? Perhaps she would not die if she won the battle? Perhaps Di Fui would treat her injuries? Perhaps. He went through the snow and wind with that small hope and finally found Di Fui and Gu Shijie, who almost turned into 2 ice sculptures. Di Fui was sitting in the snow with his legs crossed. His whole body and face were covered by snow to the extent he looked like he had become part of the ice mountains. The one he hugged tightly in his arms was Gu Shijie. Di Fui got her well taken care of, as there was not even a single snowflake on her face. Her face was as white as snow, her lips were pale, her eyelashes were black, as though she was sleeping tightly in his embrace. Long Sai was shocked by the scene, and his mind went blank instantly. Certainly, he knew Gu Shijie was dead because he was the medical expert in this era. She was dead even though her body was still soft and her appearance still looked exquisite. Di Fui's forehead was leaning against her forehead as if he was whispering to her. He carefully wrapped her in his embrace and used his body to block all the snow from her, as though she would wake up soon and be fine. He knew that she liked to be in his embrace. However, he had not hugged her or let her rest in his arms since they had broken up. Now he could hug her however he wanted. Unfortunately, she could never feel it anymore. Long Sai's eyes turned red. His blood was boiling and gushed up to his head. Without waiting any longer, he rushed over rapidly and hit Di Fui. Bast *RD. You've killed her. Are you happy now? In fact, the 4 messengers were shocked by the scene too. They were shocked because they did not expect Long Sai to have the courage to attack their lord. Unfortunately, it was too late when they were about to stop him. They quickly closed their eyes and waited for Long Sai to be thrown far away. After all, Long Sai's kung fu was too lousy compared to Di Fui's. It was not an exaggeration at all even if they described the differences between them as heaven and earth. Bang! Long Sai has indeed hit Di Fui's back. Di Fui's body slightly trembled and blood dripped from the edge of his mouth. Long Sai could not believe that he did not set any wizardry barrier to protect himself. The 4 messengers were equally stunned. Mu Feng was the first to respond. Thus, he immediately leaped to stop Long Sai, who still wanted to attack Di Fui. Meanwhile, Mu Yin, Mu Dian, and Mu Lei quickly knelt in front of Di Fui. My lord! Di Fui's face was pale like an ice sculpture. His eyelashes were covered with snow, and he was sitting there motionless without saying a word as though he was dead too. None of the 4 messengers have their lord in such a state. Certainly, they were sad as well as Gu Shijie passed away. However, they were panicked when they saw their depressed lord. Mu Yin moved forward as he knelt. My lord, let's go? Let's go please? Chapter 1715. 1715 Mu Dian and Mu Lei gave their opinions. My lord, you shouldn't stay here for too long. Let's head back. We'll figure out what we can do once we return. Mu Feng was very sad, but he still hoped the situation could be changed. My lord, you could collect her souls and then resurrect her, right? It was only now that Mu Feng realized how much his lord loved Gu Shijie. So why did he choose to break her heart back then? Long Sai let out a loud, sarcastic laugh. Resurrect? Haha. How are you going to do it? Look. Her souls are all shattered. Di Fui, you know soul collection spell. You knew you could save her, but you just let her souls break into pieces. So, who are you trying to show your pitiful face to now? Don't you think it's disgusting? That was the first time someone dared to scold the lord right to his face. Thus, Mu Feng grew angry and frustrated at Long Sai. Initially, he wanted to seal Long Sai's acupoint and make him mute. However, he managed to stop himself when he saw Di Fui's facial expression. Di Fui had not moved or changed his facial expression since they arrived. It was as if he had fallen into his own world, and was isolated from everyone. He did not give a single response, as if he had lost his mind. However, his lashes flashed when Long Sai cursed. At this point, Long Sai had gone all out. Di Fui, Shijie told me that you wouldn't be able to resurrect your beloved if she doesn't die. Because of this, you were panicked until your hair turned white. Although I have no idea how she got this perception. It proved that you really gave her that kind of feeling because she said it in a dream. Now she is fulfilling your wish and made your dream come true. Ha ha ha. Look, she is such an idiot, isn't she? So, just stop pretending and showing her your pitiful face. This body still looks good though it was injured before. You can use it to resurrect your beloved after healing the wounds. Don't waste Zijia's effort anymore. Difui finally raised his eyelids slowly. There's no one else, he said. His voice was extremely hoarse and his gaze looked blank. It was a lie. She was always herself, not anyone else. Long Sai ran out of words. He grabbed his fist tightly as he fixed his gaze on Difui. Then why did you lie to her? Is it really fun to watch her being hurt? Long Sai yelled. Difui mumbled as he looked at her. Yeah, I lied to her on purpose. I broke her heart on purpose. It's all my fault. Long Sai was getting angrier. He bit his teeth and finally launched an attack toward Difui. Difui, I know you've been a bastard all this time, but I didn't know you're also an asterisk shoal. That was a strong attack and plenty of ice and snow were tossed toward Difui's face at the same time. Muyan was finally pissed off. He could forget about the attack from Long Sai earlier, but how could he do that again? Did he really think that everyone could simply insult the Lord? Without waiting for another second, Muyan launched a beam toward Long Sai with the intention to force Long Sai to withdraw his attack for self-protection. Muyan had already achieved a level 10 spiritual power. Hence, Long Sai would not be able to take it if the ray hit him directly. He would probably spit out blood while being tossed away. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed and stopped between Muyan and Long Sai. Muyan's attack did not manage to fall on Long Sai, but it hit the white shadow instead. At the same time, Long Sai also hit the white shadow rather than Difui. Crack. Bang. Two loud sounds were produced. The white shadow immediately swayed. Muyan's expression changed instantly. My lord, shouted Muyan with a trembling voice. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.